At the very end of a failed hunt, Sungjin reaches up weakly as the operator announces that every player is dead and the chapter is closing. With death closing in, Sungjin feels an almost relieved calm and admits he is tired of all the violence. Then the operator says he was humanity's last surviving player and grants him a final reward called Restart. A new message explains that Restart will send him back to the beginning with all his memories intact, and Sungjin can only stare in shock. When he opens his eyes again, Sungjin is back in the familiar white room where the very first hunt began. He checks himself and realizes all the powerful gear he gathered in his previous life is gone, including the rings on his hands. The truth sinks in fast. He really has been sent all the way back to the first chapter. As the operator repeats the old rule about killing the enemy or dying, Sungjin bitterly mouths the ending before she even says it. The story rewinds to the day humanity first heard the operator's mechanical voice announcing that a hunt was about to begin. In the next instant, every person is teleported alone into a small blank white room with a hologram for Chapter 0. The operator lays out the first cruel tutorial: kill the enemy or die, and pick one starter weapon. Sungjin immediately chooses a katana, and the old weapon appearing in his hands feels painfully familiar. He studies the sword and quietly admits it has been a long time since he last saw it. The countdown ends, the chapter board vanishes, and the Chapter 0 enemy is summoned into the room. Instead of attacking, Sungjin stares at the mannequin and the katana in his hand, crushed by the thought of repeating the whole nightmare. Memories of endless battles and dead comrades flood back, and for a moment Sungjin just stops fighting inside. When the operator warns that only 20 seconds remain, steel spikes suddenly burst from the ceiling to force the kill. Sungjin lowers his head and admits he cannot do this anymore, even as the trap closes in. At 10 seconds, the spike-covered ceiling starts dropping for real, leaving him nowhere to run. Even when the final countdown begins, Sungjin stays still and thinks this cruel restart might not be worth taking. But right before the end, a remembered promise from someone important cuts through his despair and makes him flinch back to himself. At the very last second, Sungjin snaps into motion and cuts the mannequin's neck with one clean swing. The operator's voice glitches mid-announcement, the descending spikes freeze, and the chapter suddenly clears. His reward window shows nothing useful, but Sungjin steadies himself and decides the second chance might still change everything. The moment Chapter 0 ends, Sungjin is teleported into a massive hall packed with surviving humans from all over the world. Everyone around him panics and tries to make sense of what happened, while Sungjin watches in silence because he has already lived this scene once. The confusion gets stranger when people realize they can suddenly understand languages they never learned. Then the operator addresses them from above, and everyone looks up to see the face of a beautiful woman filling the space overhead. Operator welcomes them as humanity's representatives, and Sungjin can only smirk at how fake that sounds. She names this place the Hunters Hall and tells them that clearing Chapter 0 earned them the right to become hunters for humanity. The survivors trade shaken reactions as they realize everyone here killed the same grotesque tutorial enemy to get this far. The crowd itself reveals the filter. Chapter 0 mostly left behind the elderly, children, disabled people, and anyone who could not bring themselves to kill the screaming mannequin. Operator defines a hunter as the strongest representative of the species, turning survival into a brutal test of humanity's worth. Then she shows them Purgatory, a holding place for everyone who failed Chapter 0, and the screen is tailored to each person's loved ones. The hall erupts with cries from mothers, wives, and daughters, but Sungjin only looks up in disgust and calls the whole display sick. Because he grew up an orphan, Sungjin is spared the same emotional blow even as he recognizes how vicious the tactic is. Operator raises the stakes even further. Dead hunters will also be sent to Purgatory, but if the hunts are fully cleared, everyone there will be restored alive. Her final condition is the cruelest one of all. If every hunter fails, all of humanity will be wiped out. Sungjin immediately doubts that claim, because if total failure meant extinction, his own restart should never have happened. Most of the others are still too stunned to grasp the scale of it until Operator bluntly says humanity will go extinct if the hunters cannot prove their worth. The crowd finally snaps, shouting insults and rage at Operator, but she stays completely indifferent. When she announces that hunting will begin shortly, Sungjin ignores the chaos and starts planning around what he remembers from his first life. He lifts the katana and looks at his own reflection in the blade, using that quiet moment to make himself a promise. This time, Sungjin vows to clear every chapter perfectly. With that decision made, Sungjin braces himself and is teleported out of the Hunter's Hall toward the next hunt. Sungjin arrives in the Greenskin Wildlands and immediately recognizes the savage chapter layout from his previous life. A floating cube appears beside him, and the operator warns that these early phases are combat tutorials only in name because failure still means death. The first phase opens with goblins and a 3-minute limit, but Sungjin is already drawing his katana before the explanation finishes. Before the operator can finish describing goblins, Sungjin wipes them out so fast that her lecture cuts straight to victory. He claims the reward without hesitation and shuts down the operator's sales pitch by putting his first point straight into dexterity. When the operator starts explaining coins, Sungjin cuts her off again and refuses to buy anything. Phase 2 brings hobgoblins, and Sungjin ignores the briefing and rushes in before the operator can finish a sentence. He clears the hobgoblins just as easily, and this time the operator gives up on the long explanation. Sungjin dumps all 3 new stat points into Dexterity 2 and repeats that he still will not spend his coins. At Phase 3, Sungjin finally pauses because the orc is the first monster that used to kill weaker hunters in this tutorial. As the operator describes the orc's size and weapons, a muscular orc bursts out from behind the palisade. The sight makes Sungjin remember how hard this fight was the first time, and he almost laughs because that version of him is gone now. The orc swings a club at Sungjin's head, and Sungjin dodges by leaning just out of range instead of wasting movement. The moment the club slams into the ground and the orc stiffens, Sungjin slices the back of its knee. The crippled orc drops to its knees, and Sungjin immediately takes the neck opening and beheads it in one strike. After the face closes, Sungjin flicks blood from his blade and studies the corpse with a new suspicion. He realizes the chapter structure is the same, but the monsters are not exact copies, because this orc has long hair instead of being bald like before. He still takes the reward exactly the same way, pushing all 5 new points into dexterity. But when he is about to refuse the shop again, Sungjin stops because the next enemy is a troll, and trolls need fire or acid to stay dead. The operator recommends buying fire, so Sungjin asks the exact cost of Salamander's Ash instead of rejecting the idea outright. When the cube says Salamander's Ash costs 6 black coins, Sungjin hesitates because it is only a temporary enchant, and he wants every coin for the long game. He checks the reusable alternative next, but Mizuki Flintstone costs 300 coins, which is far beyond what he can afford this early. After weighing both options, Sungjin grimly decides to buy nothing and face the troll empty-handed. Phase 4 begins, and a huge troll lumbers out from the palisade roaring, drool hanging from its jagged teeth. For the first time since restarting, Sungjin actually checks the timer and sees the fight has to be finished in 3 minutes. The troll charges swinging wildly, and Sungjin spends the opening exchange just reading the club and dodging cleanly. He tries the same knee cut he used on the orc, and the troll crashes down to one knee. But when Sungjin goes for the beheading, the troll still swings its club, forcing him to break off and retreat. By the time the troll rises again, the leg wound is already healed, proving brute force alone will not end this fight quickly. Sungjin admits the old trick will not work on a troll, but he also knows trolls have one weakness besides fire: they never learn. On the next charge, Sungjin cuts the troll's shin and severs the club hand to take away its main weapon. Even one-handed, the troll is still dangerous, because its other hand lashes out with spear-sharp nails. Knowing he cannot allow any time to regenerate, Sungjin lands and immediately dives back in. He lets the troll's own momentum slice off the second wrist, turning its heavy swing into self-destruction. With both hands gone, Sungjin hacks at the troll non-stop in a brutal race against its healing. When the troll finally folds forward to shield itself, Sungjin takes the opening and cuts off its head. Only after the operator confirms the kill does Sungjin finally exhale and admit how annoying it was to beat a troll without fire. Even in death the troll keeps regenerating, and Sungjin takes grim satisfaction in the 6 coins he saved by not buying Salamander's Ash. The troll's reward is much bigger, and Sungjin coldly thinks many hunters must have died here because only the strong survive this hunt. The operator tells him he cleared the tutorial early and must now wait for the next phase, a 5-person raid with other hunters. With downtime for the first time since restarting, Sungjin asks to see his status and confirms his base stats match his previous life exactly. He realizes he started stronger than average from the very beginning, especially in strength, dexterity, magic, and mind. To plan his build properly, Sungjin asks for his katana specs and checks how the weapon scales with strength and dexterity. The operator shows the rank multipliers, and Sungjin confirms that more strength would raise katana damage harder, but dexterity still gives speed, attack flow, and evasion. He decides to keep gambling on speed instead of survivability, even though ignoring endurance means a single mistake could still kill him. He commits fully by putting all 10 unspent points into dexterity before the raid begins. Sungjin reminds himself that raid rewards depend on merit, so if he does not stand out from the start, he will fall behind later. The operator starts a 1-minute synchronization countdown, and Sungjin uses the quiet to think ahead to the raid's hidden boss. He knows the obvious raid goal is killing as many monsters as possible fast, but his real edge would be finding the hidden boss. Nobody knew about this early. Since he still does not know where that hidden boss is, Sungjin settles on one plan: clear the raid fast and search the map afterward. When synchronization begins, the world blurs and 4 other hunters suddenly appear around Sungjin. The new arrivals are startled by each other, but they all go quiet the instant the operator announces that Phase 5 is a cooperative raid. The objective is to kill Orc Chief Camel within 20 minutes, and failure still means death. Sungjin studies the team while the operator explains rewards, and he realizes none of these 4 men are the same teammates he had before. The reward board confirms contribution values for goblins, hobgoblins, orcs, trolls, and camel, but says nothing at all about any hidden boss. After stressing teamwork and item purchases, the operator leaves the 5 hunters alone with 1 minute to prepare. The awkward silence finally breaks when the muscular black man proposes introductions and immediately brings up the real issue: fire for trolls. The muscular black man asks how many black coins everyone has left, and says he still has 7 after spending some in the tutorial. The others answer one by one with 8, 6, and 6, proving all of them already burned coins on healing or fire items. When the group turns to the last holdout, Sungjin finally opens his mouth and tells them to listen carefully. At the raid entrance, Sungjin takes control and tells the others to stay right behind him because he plans to clear this raid fast. He adds the real setup for survival: buy Salamander's Ash, skip potions, and put any spare stat points into endurance so they can at least stay alive longer. The team does not trust him, and 2 of the men push back, saying they should slow down and think more carefully first. When the operator offers him a purchase, Sungjin instantly refuses, and the room freezes again when the others realize he still has 19 black coins untouched. That reveal splits the group even harder, because 2 men admire his restraint, while the Asian man immediately turns it into proof that Sungjin is selfish. Sungjin bluntly says he cannot spend those coins, but the accusation only gets worse as the hostile pair call him a liar who wants to hoard supplies for himself. Giving up on explaining, Sungjin tells them one last time to ignore him, stay together, and hunt goblins near the outskirts. The Asian man keeps attacking his authority, sneering that a teenager has no right to lecture the rest of them. With only 30 seconds left, Baltron tries to calm everyone down by buying Salamander's Ash, but the damage is already done. Instead of following the plan, the Arab man and the Asian man burn all their remaining coins on recovery potions and openly declare that Sungjin can cover them later. Watching the team collapse into selfish bickering, Sungjin decides this group would normally be wiped out and stops wasting any more time on them. At 10 seconds to start, Sungjin stands up, walks to the entrance alone, and ignores Baltron when the officer tries to stop him. The countdown hits 0, and the instant the raid begins, Sungjin explodes forward into the wildlands by himself. After Sungjin vanishes ahead, the 4 remaining men still cannot move as a team and immediately start arguing over who has to take the vanguard. The others finally push Baltron to the front because he is a police officer, and he reluctantly accepts the role with only a club in hand. He leads them carefully into the wildlands, planning to pull small groups, but the moment they enter, they freeze at the sight waiting for them. The path is covered in a mountain of goblin and greenskin corpses, and the men realize Sungjin has already butchered more than a dozen monsters on his own. Remembering Sungjin's warning, Baltron decides their best move is to follow the corpse trail and catch up to him. As they creep deeper in, the operator suddenly warns that the boss monster has appeared, and a heavy roar shakes the area ahead. Baltron runs toward the sound, but the other 3 hang back again, already trying to avoid the fight. When Baltron reaches the boss area, he sees Sungjin charging alone through goblins, hobgoblins, orcs, and trolls straight at the towering orc chief. Every monster that tries to block Sungjin gets torn apart, and even 2 trolls attacking together lose limbs before they can slow him down. The orc chief swings a terrifying club with shocking speed, but Sungjin reads the attack cleanly and slips past it. Sungjin immediately cripples the boss, cutting off fingers, carving through its body, and turning the fight into a one-sided execution. When the chief tries one last desperate swing, Sungjin dodges again and slices open its throat, ending the boss on the spot. The raid objective completes, but Sungjin does not relax for a second because the surviving trolls have already regenerated and come at him again. Before Sungjin can finish them, terrified screams erupt behind Baltron as the 3 men he left back have drawn 2 more trolls onto themselves. The fleeing trio rushes straight behind Sungjin for cover, and the 2 new trolls swing at him the instant they arrive. Sungjin casually cuts an arm off each of the new trolls, but the interruption lets the first pair regenerate again and drags the fight out. For the first time, Sungjin shows real frustration, because he knows he can win, but these regenerating trolls are wasting the time he needs for the hidden boss. Baltron finally understands the problem and pulls out the Salamander's Ash he bought earlier, deciding to support Sungjin instead of hiding behind him. He coats his club in the ash, ignites it in flame, and tells Sungjin to just pin the trolls down so he can finish them properly. Sungjin instantly disables the trolls by slicing through elbows and knees, dropping all 4 onto the floor in a flailing heap. Baltron smashes the burning club into their wounded joints, cauterizing the cuts so the trolls finally stop regenerating and die for good. The moment the trolls are dead, Sungjin asks for the remaining time and learns he has already burned over a minute he could not afford to lose. At the boss hall, Sungjin scans the room and quickly decides the hidden boss is probably not in the same place as the normal boss. Before he leaves, Sungjin stops Baltron, gets his name, and decides the officer is useful enough to trust with part of the search. He orders Baltron to search the nearby area with the other 2 survivors, saying the flaming club and a 3-man team should handle anything up to a lone troll. Sungjin also teaches Baltron how to use the operator's cube like a walkie-talkie, and tells him to report anything hidden or strange immediately. The Asian man tries to ask how Sungjin knew there were secrets in the raid, but Sungjin walks off without giving him a single word. A little later, Baltron leads the remaining 2 men through the wildlands and finally runs into a manageable pack of 5 goblins. Baltron orders them into a circle, and this time the group actually follows his lead. The fight goes smoothly, and after smashing down several goblins, Baltron realizes that ordinary enemies are well within their reach now. That small success gives the white man some confidence back, but the Asian man immediately asks why they should risk themselves at all now that the main objective is done. Baltron explains that extra kills should mean more stat points and black coins later, and he repeats Sunjin's advice to keep hunting safely on the outskirts. Still worried about how rewards work, the group asks the operator, and the cube explains that contribution is calculated from damage, kills, support, scouting, and more. The white man nervously asks for his score and learns his contribution is only 4.3%. Baltron checks next and finds he is at 7.2%, a little better thanks to actually helping Sunjin finish the trolls. When the Asian man finally gets his own number, the answer is a humiliating 1.8%, and his earlier cowardice suddenly has a price tag on it. Regret hits the group at once, and Baltron rallies them to use the remaining time to hunt harder and keep watching for anything unusual. Elsewhere in the wildlands, Sunjin tears across the map alone, killing every goblin, orc, and troll in his path while he searches for the hidden boss. Even after tearing through almost the whole area, he still finds nothing strange and asks the operator for the time again with rising irritation. With only a little over 6 minutes left, Sunjin curses aloud and realizes he may have searched nearly the entire map already. He briefly wonders if the first raid might not have a hidden boss at all, but the next second he changes course and decides to wipe out every last living thing just in case. That turns the hunt even more brutal as he chases down hidden goblins, feeding orcs, and wandering trolls without giving any of them a chance to react. In the middle of that sweep, he runs into Baltron's group struggling through a close 3-man fight against 3 trolls and cuts down 2 of them instantly. Baltron thanks him, but Sunjin only cares whether they found anything strange, and Baltron has to admit they found nothing. To settle it, Sunjin asks for the raid progress and gets the answer he needed, 95% complete, which means a hidden boss definitely still exists somewhere. Just as Sunjin moves to search again, Baltron hesitates and points out one section of the palisade that looks wrong to him. Drawing on his traffic control experience, Baltron explains that the overlapping barricades there look inefficient, and that tiny detail is enough to make Sunjin check it immediately. Up close, Sunjin sees the palisade section is indented inward and notices a crude metal rod sticking out like a hidden lever. After checking that the others are watching from a distance, Sunjin pulls the lever and the disguised section of wall rattles open. Inside is a small enclosed space like a crude castle interior, and at the far end a dark red orc hangs chained to the wall. The moment Sunjin steps closer, the operator confirms it is the hidden boss, Mad Orc Ruark, and Sunjin tightens his grip on the katana for the real fight. When Baltron and the other 2 men start to follow him in, Sunjin whips around and shouts for them to get back before they die. He is 1 beat too late, because Ruark rips free of the chains and charges straight at Sunjin with a roar. Inside the hidden enclosure, Sunjin meets Ruark head-on and drives his katana toward the Mad Orc's neck and heart, expecting a clean stop. Ruark barely reacts to the stab and keeps charging, forcing Sunjin to spring back before the first wild swing can crush him. Sunjin almost counterattacks too soon, then realizes the real threat is the chains whipping after Ruark's arms with a deadly delay. The fight turns ugly fast, because Ruark has speed and reach instead of the main boss's brute style, and one solid hit would kill fragile, dex-built Sunjin. While the other 3 men scramble away from the danger zone, Sunjin keeps backing up alone and watches for the tiniest opening. He finally tags one arm with 3 quick stabs, but Ruark still swings like a maniac, so Sunjin gives up on damage racing and starts planning a way to disable him. Sunjin knocks Ruark down with a hard kick to the shins, but even on the floor the orc keeps slashing the chains around his legs like a death trap. Trying to trap the chains, Sunjin jams his scabbard into the ground and leaps over the sweeping metal like high-risk jump rope. The scabbard catches for a heartbeat, then gets ripped free, and Sunjin realizes he needs something much heavier to pin Ruark down. Ruark comes back even faster, and while barely surviving the barrage, Sunjin spots Baltron's metal club and shouts for the officer to throw it to him. Baltron hesitates at the chain storm, then steels himself, steps into range, and hurls the club towards Sunjin. Sunjin snatches the club in his left hand, keeps the katana in his right, and waits for one more chance to topple Ruark. After tripping Ruark again, Sunjin drives the club deep into the ground and balances on it as the chains whip in. This time the chains wrap around the club and lock fast, finally pinning Ruark's arms in place. Sunjin immediately cuts off one arm, turning the impossible barrage into a manageable one-sided fight. With only one chain left to dodge, Sunjin slips around Ruark's flailing and severs the second arm too. Ruark can no longer stand or fight, so Sunjin walks up calmly, tells him to rest, and takes his head. The operator ends the raid the moment Ruark falls, and Sunjin finally exhales now that every objective in the chapter is done. After catching his breath, Sunjin sheathes his katana, pulls Baltron's club from the ground, and tosses it back to him. When the rewards are calculated, the other men get scraps, while Sunjin's overwhelming contribution earns him a staggering 505 stat points and 505 black coins. Sunjin ignores the stares and immediately starts calculating his coin total, already thinking ahead to what this huge payout can buy him. The item drops make the gap even sharper, because the others receive small recovery loot, while Sunjin gets several rare boss rewards at once. One survivor mutters that Sunjin greedily hogged the rewards, and Sunjin turns on the complaint at once, furious after saving their lives. When the complainer still talks back, Sunjin draws his katana and closes in to teach him a brutal raid rule: hunters can kill hunters inside a raid. He slashes the man's clothes into rags without touching flesh, proving how easily he could kill him and leaving the coward shaking on the floor. The man nods frantically, and Sungjin finally sheathes his sword, deciding the raid already doomed him enough without wasting more effort. With the tension still hanging in the air, the operator moves on to a new reward category and explains how raid titles work. The first title lands like a curse, because one survivor is branded coward and learns it cuts his HP in half while making monsters spot him more easily. Another survivor gets a modest spear bonus, and Baltron grimaces when his own title comes out as criminal arsonist for boosting fire damage. Then Sungjin gets Master Hunter, and the 30% boost to all stats is so huge that even he is caught off guard. When the operator says their group cleared faster than the others and has only a few minutes left, Sungjin immediately equips Master Hunter and checks the difference. His boosted status confirms every stat has jumped, and that sudden power spike makes clearing future raids feel possible in a way it did not before. Next he inspects the grotesque necklace from Ruark and asks the operator what exactly he picked up. The necklace turns out to be Yanhurat, a heroic item that grants a brutal 300% seal burst at the price of crashing his HP after it ends. When Sungjin lifts Yanhurat to his ear, he hears it whisper a simple, ugly command: kill them. He recoils from the voice but keeps the necklace anyway, because dangerous tools are still tools if he survives long enough to need them. The chained gear from Ruark surprises him too, because Free Arc is not a weapon at all but heroic wrist armor with a crowd control cleanse. When he equips Free Arc, the shackles lock onto one wrist, and the chains wrap along his arm like improvised armor. The skull-decorated club is exactly as valuable as it looks, but because it favors strength over dexterity, Sungjin decides to sell it instead of keeping it. The operator's resale price is insultingly low, so instead of dumping it to the system, Sungjin remembers Baltron was the only one who truly helped him and calls the old officer over. Baltron is visibly nervous around him now, but Sungjin gets straight to business and asks how many black coins the officer has. When Baltron says he has 76 coins, Sungjin offers him Skull Romabel for exactly that amount, and tells him it is practically free for a heroic weapon. Sungjin quickly explains the trade method, and once their cubes touch, the system opens a formal exchange between them. They complete the trade, and Skull Romabel vanishes from Sungjin's hands and reappears in Baltron's as the officer buys his survival at a bargain price. Sungjin even explains the club's fear effect for keeping enemies weaker, and when Baltron asks how he knows so much, Sungjin only says the truth would sound unbelievable. With 1 minute left before extraction, Sungjin closes his eyes and holds his katana quietly, while Baltron studies him and finally sees both the teenager and the killer in the same person. Thinking it through, Baltron accepts that without Sungjin he would have died to the trolls, the chief, or Ruark long before now. Unable to leave it there, Baltron walks over and asks the teenager's name, wanting at least to know the man who saved him. Sungjin first tries to shut that distance back down, saying they will never meet again, because everyone he gets close to ends up dead. Baltron presses once more, and Sungjin finally gives him only a fragment, K. Before Baltron can even reintroduce himself, Sungjin cuts in, remembers his full name already, and tells him to grow stronger and survive. The final countdown starts, and with only seconds left, Baltron thanks him for keeping him alive. As the last seconds tick away, Baltron looks up at the title over Sungjin's head and sends him off with the name that will stick, Master Hunter K. Sungjin returns to the Hunter's Hall and stares at the sea of survivors, already thinking most of these people will be cut down fast in the next raid. When the operator appears again, nobody curses back this time because the hall is full of grief, shock, and people trying to understand how to stay alive. The operator explains the first survival rule plainly. Hunters have to push their stats past human limits, and unspent points are useless in a real fight. She moves on to titles, warning that equipped titles work at full power while inactive ones only give half, so choosing the right title matters. The operator says equipment is just as important as stats, and that the black market is where hunters can buy the gear, tomes, and consumables they will need later. As the venue shift countdown starts, Sungjin ignores the lecture and quietly totals his black coins, landing on exactly 600. The next instant, he is dropped into the black market, a bustling bazaar under canopies where every merchant is a demi-human instead of a human. While the operator explains that black coins only spend here, Sungjin cuts straight through the noise and heads for a shop he already knows by heart. He enters the katana shop Last Edge, where the Naga merchant Kenneth greets him and immediately notices he has an eye for quality. Sungjin points to a crimson blade on the wall, and Kenneth carefully brings down the one sword Sungjin actually came to see. The moment Blood Vengeance is in his hands, Sungjin's face softens because this is the legendary katana he carried until his death in his previous life. He gives the old weapon a test swing, but the nostalgia ends fast when Kenneth names the price, 9,700 black coins. With only 600 coins and nowhere near enough health to use its blood-burning skill well, Sungjin reluctantly returns the katana and walks away. Instead of chasing power now, he heads to his real target deep in the market, Meridian's jewelry shop, Eternal Moment. The Catwoman merchant Meridian tries to size him up, but Sungjin bluntly asks for the exact item he came for, the Heart of Gold. When she remarks that the ring is expensive for someone fresh out of the first raid, Sungjin surprises her by naming the 500 coin price himself and paying without hesitation. The heart of gold appears in his palm, and Sungjin equips the plain sapphire ring immediately because its coin bonus will snowball his future raids. It is a risky early game purchase that gives him no combat edge at all, but Sungjin knows only someone strong enough to keep surviving can turn this ring into a huge advantage. After shopping, he leaves the market center and heads to a small inn on the outskirts called 99 Nights. Inside, the owl innkeeper Dalyapin politely offers a room, but Sungjin asks for food first and orders from memory without even touching the menu. The steak is as good as he remembers, and over the meal Sungjin checks the clock and learns he still has just over 9 hours before the next raid. Later, he relaxes in the inn's bath, but even there his thoughts spiral back to the reset and the question he still cannot answer. Why was he revived at all? With no answers coming, Sungjin makes himself a harder promise instead. On this second chance, he will clear every objective perfectly and force the truth to reveal itself. By morning, he is back downstairs for a simple breakfast, treating the final minutes before the raid with the same controlled routine as everything else. With only 15 minutes left, he finally spends his saved points, heavily boosting strength and dexterity while putting just enough into endurance for safety. His status screen confirms what he wanted: speed and attack power near the top of the world already, with enough durability to cover a bad surprise. After checking the timer again, he kills the last few minutes with an iced Americano, staying almost absurdly calm before another life or death raid. Then the teleport hits, and Sungjin lands in a henna's forest, a dark moonlit woodland full of predators and another 4-phase tutorial. Phase 1 starts with a grey wolf, and Sungjin kills it the instant it lunges, barely treating it as a threat. The easy start only makes him think ahead, because the real problem in this raid is not the normal stages but finding the hidden boss in time. Remembering how much easier a raid becomes with competent allies, he quietly hopes this random team includes people who can at least follow orders. Phase 2 interrupts that thought with a Shadow Puma ambush from behind, but Sungjin dives aside and carves it open in a single counter. As the Puma collapses with its guts spilling out, Sungjin drifts back into old memories of the comrades who once kept him alive. Those memories turn sour when he reaches someone he does not want to remember, and the bitterness carries straight into Phase 3. The grizzly bear rushes him head-on, and Sungjin's bad mood turns it into an execution as he drops the giant beast with one flash of his blade. Even with only his plain starter katana, his absurdly high stats are already enough to cut through monsters most hunters would struggle just to survive. That only revives his hunger for blood vengeance, because he knows this borrowed breathing room will not last once stronger raids start piling up. Phase 4 finally becomes a real fight when a dire wolf appears and summons 3 grey wolves to circle him as a pack. Instead of waiting to be boxed in, Sungjin explodes toward the weakest wolf, decapitates it, and kicks another one aside before the full pack can close. The remaining wolves try to trade bodies for an opening, but one bites into the chains of free arc instead of his arm and gets nothing except a metallic crunch. From there the outcome is obvious, and Sungjin cuts down the last wolves in a few merciless swings to finish the tutorial first. He checks free arc afterward and sees the wolf's teeth did not even dent the shackle, quietly confirming how useful this odd gear really is. Because he finished before everyone else, the forest shifts into a campfire waiting zone where Sungjin sits alone with his katana and waits for the rest of the hunters to catch up. At last the synchronization begins, and one by one other hunters start materializing around the campfire, as Sungjin watches to see what kind of team fate gave him this time. At the campfire waiting zone, Sungjin sizes up his new raid party by their titles and immediately realizes this group is weak. The operator's mission window appears over the fire and makes the stakes blunt: kill the Wolf Queen Ahenna in 25 minutes or die. The tall hunter with the hooligan title immediately tries to dominate the team, barking for everyone to gather and mocking them as dead weight. Sungjin and the old lumberjack stay back, and when the hooligan snaps at them too, Sungjin silently gives up on teamwork. He decides he can clear the raid alone, but the hidden boss and the ticking time limit still bother him. With 1 minute left before the raid starts, Sungjin tells the operator to dump all his points into dexterity. He thinks through the choice and decides speed matters more than toughness here, even if he now regrets some earlier points spent on endurance. Right before the start, a thin man with a huge pack walks out of the woods and introduces himself as the wandering merchant Eindel. Eindel offers overpriced fire and recovery items, and Sungjin remembers enough from his past life to recognize this odd merchant without trusting him. The hooligan tries to rob the merchant on the spot, but a raid warning flashes and scares him into letting go. Once the threat passes, Eindel smoothly resumes his sales pitch and pushes fire-based items as the best answer to the forest's beasts. The weak hunters rush to spend their hard-earned coins on consumables, desperate for any edge that might keep them alive. Even the hooligan swallows his pride and buys Salamander's Ash after watching everyone else do it. When Eindel offers him the same deal, Sungjin refuses and keeps saving every coin for the katana he really wants. As the final countdown starts, Sungjin decides the merchant is strange but not worth thinking about now, and draws his sword. The hooligan tries one last time to pull him into the group, but Sungjin only throws back a few blunt survival tips about wolves, bears, and pumas. The raid begins, and Sungjin instantly sprints into the dark forest alone, while Eindel calls after the team that his shop will stay open. Deep in Ahenna's forest, Sungjin tears through wolves, pumas, and even charging grizzlies so easily that the fights barely slow him down. He is not chasing points anymore. With Heart of Gold and Master Hunter already boosting rewards, Sungjin cares far more about finding the hidden boss and heroic loot. Dire wolves still force him to pay attention, because unlike the other animals, they fight with speed and coordinated pack tactics. After carving through the forest for nearly 5 minutes, Sungjin checks the remaining time and judges that the boss should be close now. A shadow puma drops from above, and Sungjin kills it on reflex before it can touch him. Then one gray wolf stops attacking, raises its head, and starts a long howl that spreads through the whole forest. Sungjin hears the pack's call and immediately knows the real boss has arrived. The operator confirms it, and the wolf queen Yahello steps out, a snow-white giant with the size of a monster and the eyes of something far smarter. Yahello's howl brings dire wolves and gray wolves flooding in behind her until Sungjin is staring at a pack dozen strong. Just as he starts measuring the odds, the useless team finally blunders into the battlefield and panics at the sight of the boss. Yahello answers with another patterned howl, and the wolves move like trained soldiers to surround all 4 hunters at once. Fed up, Sungjin tells them the boss is his and warns them to stay out of his way. He launches straight at Yahello, trying to cut through the pack before she can fully control the fight. Yahello strikes first with terrifying speed, but Sungjin ducks under her claws and sees her surprise the instant he avoids them. Sungjin counters with an upward slash that cuts across her face, and Yahello leaps back with a pained cry. The wound is shallow, and before he can finish her, dire wolves slam in from the sides and force him to back off. In seconds the wolves rebuild a living shield around their queen, and Sungjin has to admit they protect her with brutal discipline. Behind him, the 3 other hunters are already falling apart, flailing with flaming weapons and firing arrows almost at random. Yahello changes the rhythm again, ordering the wolves to stop attacking and circle the hunters in a controlled orbit. Sungjin locks onto Yahello again, but she answers his stare by planting her biggest dire wolf directly between them. He briefly checks the others for support, and finds a pathetic little cluster forming under the hooligan's shaky orders. The teamwork lasts 1 second, because the novice swordsman accidentally sets the hooligan's shirt on fire and gets cursed out for it. Watching that mess, Sungjin gives up completely on using them and decides to thin the pack himself until he can reach the queen. Yahello moves before he can, sending the whole ring crashing inward in one coordinated assault. The novice swordsman's fire runs out at the worst moment, and as soon as he hesitates, the wolves tear off his sword arm and rip him apart. The hooligan realizes his own flame will die too, reaches for more ash, and gets killed before he can even finish cursing. The novice scout sprays fire arrows into the trees, but once his protectors are dead, he is dragged down too while trying to run to Sungjin. Sungjin cannot save them because the strongest wolves are still busy tying him down in close combat. Then Yahello suddenly calls the wolves off, and Sungjin turns to see why the battlefield has changed. A stray fire arrow has started a forest fire, and now the flames pen Sungjin in while the wolves keep their distance from the blaze. Even after non-stop killing, the pack still looks endless because Yahello keeps refilling it every time he cuts too many down. When he checks the clock again, Sungjin sees Yahello has already burned 5 precious minutes just by stalling him. He studies the queen and realizes she knows exactly what she is doing. She cannot beat him head-on, so she is trying to win on time. For the first time, Sungjin regrets refusing Angel's consumables and wonders if his habit of hoarding coins has gone too far. That thought pushes him to the grotesque Yanhurat necklace in his pocket, the one power-up he has been trying not to rely on. He remembers exactly what Zealot can do, but he also remembers the hunters who leaned on that power and died horribly for it. As he hesitates, the necklace itself whispers from his hand and urges him to kill. Sungjin hates the choice, but with the hidden boss still ahead and time bleeding away, he decides Yahello has to die in the next 30 seconds. He puts Yanhurat on, and the maddening voice in his ears becomes louder and clearer at once. The moment it is equipped, Sungjin explodes forward toward Yahello, and the first wolf in his path is cut down almost effortlessly. As blood splashes onto him, the necklace's whispers ramp up from a murmur into a manic command to murder everything in front of him. Dire wolves and even a charging grizzly bear become nothing but meat in Zealot mode as his speed and power jump to a terrifying level. The more he kills, the louder the voice gets, until the necklace is practically pounding murder into his skull. Sungjin becomes a bloody path of destruction straight toward the queen, smashing through every beast that throws itself in front of her. For the first time Yahello sounds afraid, and when every wolf surges in to stop him, Sungjin roars back that he will kill them all. The fire arrows turn Yahello's forest into a full wildfire, and when the smoke clears, Sungjin is standing alone among heaps of dead beasts with Yahello's corpse behind him. He rips the grotesque Yanhurat necklace off his neck, still hearing its mad whispers to kill even after the fight is over. Sungjin checks his condition and sees that Zealot left him drained with only a third of his health, even though he came out of the frenzy without a visible wound. That hard drop reminds him why Zealot gets hunters killed. If the 30 seconds end before every enemy is dead, it leaves them weak, confused, and surrounded. He asks the remaining time and realizes less than a minute has passed, so the necklace's madness bought him speed he badly needed. To stabilize himself fast, Sungjin pulls out 2 small recovery potions and drinks them both until his health is completely restored. Just as he turns to search for the hidden boss, A snapped branch tells him someone is still hiding nearby. The old lumberjack lunges out in panic with an axe, but to Sungjin, the desperate swing is painfully slow. Sungjin slices the axe head clean off, and the old man stumbles back clutching the useless handle in shock. Recognizing him as the only survivor who stayed away from the hooligans, Sungjin lowers his weapon instead of finishing him. The old man calls Sungjin a monster for what he saw during the frenzy, but Sungjin simply tells him to wait by the starting campfire if he wants to survive. Leaving the frightened old man behind, Sungjin runs deeper into the forest to hunt for the hidden clue. When he checks the raid progress and sees 95% complete, Sungjin realizes he already slaughtered every normal enemy when Yahello called them in. He reaches the blackened edge of the raid zone and confirms it is only the lethal boundary, not a secret passage. After retracing his steps and finding nothing, he circles back past Yahello's corpse trail more frustrated than before. At the entrance campfire, the old man still panics at the sight of Sungjin, while Eindel greets him like a normal customer. Sungjin ignores both of them and keeps searching, because he still has no clue where the hidden boss is hiding. 5 more minutes disappear as the wildfire makes the whole forest bright as day, but Sungjin still finds nothing except more dead ends. An owl call finally makes him look up, and in the firelight he spots a nest high in the tree branches. He climbs straight up after it, and once the owl flies off, he finds a round white crystal hidden inside the nest instead of an egg. The operator identifies the crystal as the hidden piece called Perfect Moonstone, but its sale price is only 100 black coins. That low price bothers him, because he remembers hearing that the hidden piece from this raid should never be sold. Looking between the half moon in the sky and the perfectly round moonstone in his hand, Sungjin starts putting the trick together. The forest's warning about predators of the night seals it for him, and Sungjin rushes back toward the campfire with the answer. Back at the entrance, the old man and Eindel are chatting peacefully, which only makes Sungjin's suspicion sharper. Sungjin walks straight up and asks Eindel about hidden bosses, testing him instead of searching the forest again. Eindel plays dumb, then casually describes a secret boss with incredible strength, and Sungjin responds by drawing his katana at him. The old man instantly shields Eindel and insists Sungjin is the real monster, still unable to forget that earlier blood-crazed rampage. Sungjin warns the old man to get behind him if he wants to live, because the harmless merchant act only matters until Eindel turns hostile. When the old man still will not move, Sungjin starts counting down and takes the perfect moonstone in hand. On 3, he throws the moonstone to Eindel, forcing the hidden trigger instead of waiting for another clue. The instant Eindel catches it and sees the words full moon, his blue eyes turn amber, and Sungjin knows he was right. The operator confirms the reveal as Eindel's body swells into the hidden boss werewolf Eindel in just a few brutal seconds. Sungjin shouts for the old man to run, but the man freezes for one fatal second too long. Eindel kills the old man immediately, tearing out his neck before the man can even scream. With blood on his jaws, the werewolf throws back a howl, and Sungjin meets it with pure irritation instead of fear. Their first exchange is so fast that Sungjin barely misses Eindel's claws, and he realizes the hidden boss can match his speed. Eindel's next strike targets Sungjin's weapon arm on purpose, but the chains of free arc catch the claws and save his hand. That deliberate attack tells Sungjin he is not fighting a beast acting on instinct but a clever killer hiding inside a monster's body. When Sungjin demands to know what he is, Eindel answers with a rough voice and openly enjoys that his disguise was finally exposed. Eindel casually mocks the dead old man's bad meat and says he wants to see how Sungjin tastes instead. The fight resumes at breakneck speed, and after several exchanges both men pull back, already recognizing each other as dangerous opponents. Sungjin briefly considers using Manhwa again, but he forces himself to reject the easy answer because relying on that cheat this early would be a bad sign for everything ahead. Instead, he starts giving ground on purpose, dodging and blocking while luring the werewolf toward the entrance campfire. At the last second, Sungjin plants his feet by the fire and kicks a burning log straight into Eindel. The flames catch in Eindel's fur, and that tiny instant of fear is all Sungjin needs to land a deep slash across his abdomen. Sungjin keeps pressing the weakness he found and cuts off Eindel's legs before the hidden boss can recover. Even on the ground, Eindel still tries to fight, so Sungjin stomps him down and severs both arms to end it completely. Eindel calls him cruel with his last hatred-filled stare, and Sungjin coldly answers that talkative enemies make their own deaths easier. Then Sungjin drives the blade into Eindel's chest and reminds him that a fool should never tell his enemy that beasts fear fire. The operator declares the hidden boss cleared and ends the raid immediately, finally confirming Sungjin has completed every objective. Only then does the strain hit him, and Sungjin exhales, knowing that even Chapter 2 was brutal to clear at 100% alone. That hard win leaves him thinking about the real difference from his past life. This time his teammates have been awful, and that bad luck is making every raid harder than it should be. Among everyone he has met so far, Gerald Baltran is the only teammate Sungjin considers even somewhat reliable, so his thoughts drift to the officer under the third quarter moon. He worries that even a solid man like Baltran could die with the wrong group, and before Sungjin can sit with that thought, the operator starts calculating his rewards. After the raid, the operator announces the kill rewards, and Sungjin gets everything because he cleared the whole chapter alone. The payout jumps again when Heart of Gold activates, and Sungjin quietly enjoys seeing his black coin total surge. Then the item rewards drop in front of him in a small heap, and he immediately stores the less important consumables away. Sungjin barely expects anything from the title reward because Master Hunter already feels too strong to replace. But the new title shocks him. Treasure Hunter can ask the operator for hidden boss or secret location hints during a raid. He makes the operator repeat the rule, making sure this reward is really as valuable as it sounds. The catch makes the choice harder. If he does not equip Treasure Hunter, he only gets half the effect and just one hint per raid. Instead of deciding on the spot, Sungjin shelves the title dilemma for later and turns to the actual loot. First he checks Ahena's drop, a pair of wolf foot boots he remembers envying in his past life. He equips them immediately, trading his old sneakers for speed that will help him hunt future hidden pieces. Next he inspects a small wolf carving and realizes it is a summon tied to Ahena's bloodline. When he activates it, the carving bursts apart, and a beautiful white wolf appears in front of him. The wolf obeys at once, and Sungjin is visibly relieved to have a loyal partner after his run of awful human teammates. He shortens Grandkin's name to Kane, and the wolf answers with a bark like he understands every word. The item he is most curious about is the mini merchant pack, because it looks exactly like Angel's. The operator reveals why it matters. The pouch can spit out one legendary crafting material before disappearing. That reward is so huge that Sungjin hesitates, but the return timer gives him only a minute to decide. He finally opens it, expecting something good, and gets a result so absurd that it stops him cold. Inside is Ancient Stories of the East Part 1, a legendary material so rare he only saw it near the end of his previous life. He instantly understands the upside. If he can gather all 3 parts early, future raids will become much easier. When he asks the operator where to find parts 2 and 3, she finally refuses to answer him. Blocked by the operator, he remembers the black market has a bookstore and decides that is his next lead. Back in the crowded Hunter's Hall, Sungjin looks over the mass of survivors and remembers how that number will keep shrinking until almost nobody is left. The operator congratulates everyone for clearing Chapter 2 and officially calls them full hunters. But nobody looks like celebrating. Then comes the real warning. From now on the tutorials are over, and future chapters will throw hunters straight into live raids. Other hunters are shaken by losing their safe scouting phase, but Sungjin just yawns because that change barely matters to him. When the operator says the next raid note will be sent to 99 nights, Sungjin only wants the speech to end so he can shop. As soon as he reaches the black market, Sungjin heads in with one goal: find the bookstore and learn about the missing volumes. He searches for a while before spotting a tucked-away shop called Dry Mouth in a quiet corner. Inside, the owner Gourmet is so buried in his reading that Sungjin has to fake a cough just to be noticed. Gourmet finally looks up, and Sungjin skips small talk by pulling out Ancient Stories of the East Part 1. The goat bookseller is stunned that anyone could get a legendary crafting material this early, and Sungjin flatly says it was a raid reward. When Sungjin asks for the other parts, Gourmet vanishes into the book piles to check his stock. After a messy search and a pair of book avalanches, Gourmet returns with parts 2 and 3 in his hands. The next shock is the price: 5,000 black coins per volume. Sungjin quickly realizes finishing the set would cost 10,000 more coins, and Gourmet bluntly insists the complete item is worth far more than that. With no way to haggle, Sungjin leaves the bookstore knowing he cannot afford the parts yet. Walking through the market, he falls into a harsh choice between 2 dreams he cannot pay for yet: the complete book, or his old legendary sword. By the time he reaches 99 nights, his white wolf is already waiting at a table like he belongs there. The operator explains that anything linked by spiritual link can stay at the inn, which makes Kane even more useful to Sungjin. Sungjin invites Kane inside for dinner, sounding noticeably softer with the wolf than he ever is with people. Dalyapin welcomes Sungjin back as usual, then startles at the unfamiliar bark and twists around to see the white wolf behind him. Sungjin casually introduces Kane as his ally and asks Dalyapin to look after him when he is away. Then Sungjin orders a big sushi dinner for himself and a raw beef meal for Kane without hesitation. Over dinner, Sungjin savors the last fatty tuna piece like a luxury he should not overdo before tomorrow's raid. Kane finishes his own meal just as neatly, and Sungjin heads upstairs after one more affectionate goodbye. In the bath, Sungjin checks the timer and sees he has just under 11 hours before the next raid. The operator displays his current status, and the huge pile of unallocated points confirms how much stronger he is getting far earlier than last time. After thinking it through, he puts most of the points into strength and dexterity, but also gives endurance a heavy boost because mages are coming next. He makes that call for a practical reason. Some magic attacks cannot be dodged, so surviving future raids means preparing for them now. That same logic pushes his title decision too, and in the end he keeps Master Hunter for one more round instead of switching to Treasure Hunter yet. His plan is cautious but deliberate. Test Treasure Hunter later, because Master Hunter is still too valuable to drop blindly. Exhaustion finally catches up with him, and he heads to bed as the calm after battle settles in. Just as he is about to rest, a knock interrupts him with the next raid's information note. Dalyapin politely hands over the paper, and Sungjin accepts it out of courtesy even though he already knows most of what it will say. The note confirms the next raid is Grey Soul Cemetery, but it contains only ordinary details and no clue about any hidden piece. So while other hunters would be cramming that note for survival, Sungjin sets it aside, turns off the light, and goes straight to sleep. The next morning at 99 nights, Sungjin orders a simple breakfast, and only then remembers Kane needs food too. While he eats, Sungjin thinks about returning to Grey Soul Cemetery and immediately loses his appetite. He steps outside with his latte, sees the black market in the distance, and briefly considers buying holy water before deciding he has to keep saving coins. With only a few minutes left, Sungjin heads back inside and spends the stat points he planned out last night. Once the countdown starts, Sungjin pets Kane goodbye and braces himself to chase another 100% clear alone. He vanishes from the inn and reappears in Grey Soul Cemetery, a cold graveyard of dead trees, tombstones, and weak street lamps that still unsettles him. The operator warns that tutorials are over from here on out, and future raids will start immediately. 4 more hunters sink into the raid, and Sungjin immediately picks out 2 titles worth watching: Mid-Level Samurai and Veteran Spearman. Before Sungjin can say anything, the young samurai loudly claims the boss for himself and tells everyone else to go farm trash mobs. Hero's expensive gear proves he is no fraud, but his showy attitude makes Sungjin cringe because he used to act the same way. The others push back and say they should stay together, so Hero gives in but still brags that the boss contribution will belong to him. The raid objective appears: kill the Lich Deathman within 25 minutes or die. Trying to steady the team, Henrik suggests they exchange names before the fighting starts. Kulta from Nepal and Watanabe Hiroaki introduce themselves first, and Hiro's upbeat energy makes him seem weirdly untouched by the nightmare they're in. Sungjin gives only the fake name K, Henrik mishears it as K, and the last hunter finally mutters that his name is Akana. Henrik tries to bond them by talking about the families they want to save, and Hiro admits his mother and sister are being held hostage. Kulta says he has 30 relatives to save, while Sungjin stays silent and Akana gives away nothing at all. With 1 minute left, Henrik quickly reviews the pamphlet warning that arrows do not work on skeletons and assigns rough roles for the group. Hiro corners Sungjin with excited questions about his country, his basic katana, and the chain on his arm, and Sungjin is visibly getting fed up. When Hiro brags that he won an Osaka Kendo Regional, Sungjin finally gives him a brief reply and connects that background to the samurai title. Hiro proudly explains his title boosts katana attacks by 20%, then starts prying into Sungjin's Master Hunter title too. Sungjin shuts him down with a cold "go get it yourself," already thinking less about small talk than about contribution and surviving to the end. After sizing everyone up, Sungjin decides these 4 are strong enough to survive normal mobs without him, so he will split off again. He tells them plainly that he fights better alone, and if they need help he will come back, but for now the other 4 should stay together and hunt only normal monsters. Henrik and Kulta protest, but Hiro lights up instead and treats Sungjin's decision like a personal race. As the final countdown begins, Sungjin draws his katana and takes point at the cemetery gate, while Henrik makes one last attempt to stop him. Sungjin gives Henrik the ugliest apology he can manage, saying this raid works that way and telling him to think of him as a troll. The instant the gate opens, Sungjin bolts into Grey Soul Cemetery alone and leaves the other 4 behind. After Sungjin disappears, the remaining 4 steady themselves and agree to keep moving as one team. They set a simple formation with Henrik and Hiro in front, Akana in the middle, and Kulta in back. Before they go deeper, Henrik and Kulta reveal they actually bought lanterns from the black market, while Hiro and Akana clearly did not. Their lamps become the group's only safe pockets of visibility as they head into the cemetery proper. The first zombies lurch out of the dark, and Hiro charges them before Henrik can fight the careful defensive battle he wanted. Hiro immediately proves his skill is real, carving zombies apart with fast, disciplined katana work that even Henrik has to respect. Henrik nearly gets bitten when his axe only takes a zombie's wrist, and Akana saves him with a spear thrust straight through its face. Akana keeps shouting strange syllables as each spear thrust punches through another undead face and drops it instantly, making the fight feel even stranger. With Hiro and Akana cutting down most of the undead, Henrik and Kulta are reduced to carrying light and covering the edges. Even when faster ghouls break through and threaten the back line, Hiro and Akana keep bailing the group out before it gets ugly. Henrik starts to relax and says they may clear this raid, but Hiro is bothered instead, because the whole cemetery feels even easier than a henna's forest. Kulta agrees the enemy count is strangely low, and for once even the easy progress starts to feel wrong. Akana abruptly asks for Henrik's lantern with gestures alone, then runs off into the dark and leaves the others staring after him. Akana stops and lights the answer to the mystery, a hidden stretch of cemetery floor already covered in butchered zombies, ghouls, and even smashed skeletons. Looking over the hacked remains, Henrik, Hiro, and Kulta realize the obvious answer: Sungjin has been mowing through the cemetery alone. Elsewhere in the cemetery, Sungjin keeps dropping zombies 2 at a time, and the blood and bile all over him only reminds him why he hates this map. Ghouls rush him next, but Sungjin cuts them apart just as casually and keeps pressing deeper toward the boss. This is exactly why Sungjin hates Grey Soul Cemetery. The undead are gross, the whole place is filthy to fight through, and he only needs to endure it long enough to finish what he came for. His plan is simple: find the hidden red magic circle, rush down the Lich Deathmint, then search for the hidden piece afterward. The problem is that he cannot remember where the magic circle is, and the darkness makes every path look the same. Realizing he cheaped out by skipping a lantern, Sungjin calls the operator and pulls out the salamander's ash he won in the last raid. He rubs the ash onto his katana, and the blade catches a weak flame that finally gives him usable light. Skeletons march toward the flaming blade, and Sungjin almost prefers them, because bones are cleaner than rotting flesh. Using his katana in one hand and the scabbard in the other, Sungjin smashes through the skeletons so fast they barely slow him down. Even with the extra light, Sungjin still has no sense of direction, so he admits memory is useless here. So he switches to brute force. Monsters mean new ground, and corpse piles mean he has already searched there. Back at the corpse field, Henrik can only ask the obvious question: did Sungjin really do all of this by himself? Hiro knows exactly who did it, and the discovery turns his swagger into open rivalry and frustration. The four of them press on, cleaning up whatever undead survived Sungjin's path while following his trail deeper into the cemetery. Then Akana suddenly stops, seeing something far ahead in the dark before the others can make it out. Instead of attacking, Akana drops to his knees and starts bowing frantically toward a pale woman-shaped figure in a white dress out in the dark. The second hero realizes it is a ghost. All his swagger vanishes and he shrieks while hiding behind Henrik. Henrik tries to force himself into fight mode, but Hiro is useless with fear and Akana is still down on his knees praying. As the figure glides closer, Henrik finally sees the worst detail of all. There are no feet beneath the white dress. At the cemetery gate area, Henrik orders Kulta to shoot the female ghost before she gets any closer. Kulta's arrow flies straight through the ghost, and the whole group realizes ordinary attacks do nothing. Henrik braces himself to swing, but the moment he meets the ghost's bloodshot eyes, terror locks his whole body in place. Instead of attacking, the ghost raises an arm, lets out a strange cry, and drifts away in the direction she points. Once the ghost disappears, Henrik can finally move again, and the group is left shaken and confused. Akana stops chanting, thanks a blessed ancestor in plain speech, and Henrik is stunned to discover the quiet spearman can actually talk normally. Kulta pushes them to keep moving, and Henrik nervously decides that whatever they saw, it probably was not a monster. A wolf's howl rolls through the cemetery, and the party goes tense all over again because that sound should not be here. Elsewhere in the same cemetery, Sungjin keeps circling in the dark and realizes the living monsters are getting hard to find. The weak fire on Sungjin's katana burns out after 5 minutes, dropping him back into near total blackness, and reminding him that time is running short. Sungjin almost asks the operator for more salamander's ash, then remembers he has a better answer already. He throws Kane's small wolf figurine into the air, and it transforms into a full-size wolf that can see through the night. Sungjin orders Kane to lead him to the red pentagram altar by tracking active undead instead of corpses on the ground. After a short search, Kane stops with a warning growl, and Sungjin hears a large pack of undead somewhere ahead. Back with Henrik's group, the men grumble about finding only torn-apart remains and no enemies left alive. When the sound of steel, claws, and dying monsters echoes through the graveyard, the group decides to investigate. As they approach, Akana quietly calls the fighter ahead a peerless warrior. They finally see Sungjin in action, carving through zombies so fast and cleanly that he looks less like a hunter and more like a war god. Even surprise attacks fail because Sungjin blocks from blind angles with his scabbard and cuts the ghouls down in the same motion. A skeleton tries to spear Sungjin, but he slips past it, and Kane tears the undead apart on the ground. Henrik watches in awe, and even Hiro is left speechless by how far above ordinary fighter Sungjin really is. When the last undead falls, Sungjin stands alone among corpses and finally notices the other hunters have arrived. Kane growls at the newcomers until Sungjin calms him and makes it clear these hunters are not enemies. Sungjin quickly confirms all four are still alive and judges that the group is more capable than he expected. Henrik praises Sungjin's strength, but Sungjin skips the compliments and points straight to the altar he found for the boss. Sungjin tells them he is about to summon the boss and asks who wants to fight beside him. Hiro immediately steps forward to fight, while Akana stays in and Sungjin warns the others that he cannot protect them during this boss battle. Faced with that warning, Henrik and Kulta back away, leaving only Sungjin, Hiro, and Akana for the summon. Sungjin orders Hiro to collect the glowing blue bones around the altar so they can rebuild the Lich's body. Working together, Sungjin and Hiro place the bones in the correct pattern on the pentagram while Akana prepares for the fight. With everyone ready, Sungjin places the skull last and triggers the boss summon. The bones reassemble into Lich Deathmint, blue magic binds the skeleton together, and a staff flies into its hand as the boss appears. Deathmint starts to speak, but Sungjin rushes him instantly because a caster is most dangerous if you let him finish chanting. The Lich throws up an ice shield, but Sungjin slices straight through the crystal wall without slowing down. When Deathmint tries to counter with its staff, Kane leaps up and bites down on the weapon to create an opening. Sungjin uses that split second to sever the Lich's left arm and force it backward. Deathmint escapes the follow-up by blasting Sungjin away with a sudden gust spell. Hiro tries to copy Sungjin's charge, but his blade gets stuck halfway in the Lich's second ice shield. Deathmint immediately punishes that mistake with ice lances, and Hiro blocks 2 before the third drives into his stomach. While the lich is focused on Hiro, Akana bursts in from the dark and smashes the staff arm to pieces. Now missing both arms, Deathman uses wind magic again, lifts into the air, and twists into a grotesque second phase. The fallen staff rises back into Deathman's grasp between its skeletal toes, and an enormous eye scythe forms at the tip. Kane growls at the sight of the second phase, and Sunjin tightens his grip while the wounded hero gulps a potion and Akana resets his stance. The 3 hunters charge together, but the lich's new scythe has such absurd reach that even Sunjin cannot close the distance cleanly. Using that hesitation, Deathman releases a slow floating orb of ice that looks harmless until Sunjin suddenly recognizes the trap. Sunjin throws himself down and shouts for everyone to get low just before the orb explodes into a storm of deadly ice shrapnel. When the blast clears, Sunjin realizes Kane shielded him with his own body and took the ice shards instead. Furious, Sunjin charges alone while Hiro and Akana are left too injured to move properly. Deathman lashes the scythe like a whip, but Sunjin slips through every swing and tears down another ice shield by force. Sunjin reaches the boss and hacks off the lich's makeshift leg arms, reducing it to a torso and skull again. The crippled lich retreats with another gust, and Sunjin rushes after it to finish the fight. Hiro and Akana force themselves back up and join Sunjin for one more charge at the weakened lich. Deathman answers with frostbite, freezing all 3 hunters' feet to the ground before it can start a bigger spell. Sunjin breaks the bind instantly by activating Free Arc, proving this magic cannot hold him for even a moment. Deathman tries to launch a blizzard storm, but Sunjin reaches it first and cuts the lich in half from tailbone to jaw. The raid clear announcement appears, but Sunjin ignores the victory because Kane is collapsing in front of him. Kane bleeds out, reverts to his small wooden figurine form, and Sunjin quietly thanks him for protecting him. After the boss dies, Henrik and Kulta come back to the altar and find Hiro and Akana badly torn up while Sunjin stands untouched. Hiro suddenly drops to his hands and knees and begs Sunjin to accept him as a pupil after witnessing that fight. Sunjin immediately refuses, reminding Hiro they will all go separate ways after this chapter anyway. Hiro keeps pressing, but Sunjin only gives him blunt practical advice: build stats, get better items, and stop trusting dojo training over real monster fights. Even with the raid complete, Sunjin checks the remaining return time and starts walking deeper into the cemetery instead of waiting safely. When Hiro mentions there is a ghost ahead, Sunjin's bored annoyance vanishes and he stops dead to ask exactly what kind of ghost they saw. Hiro describes a glowing woman in a white dress with pale skin and blood at her lips, and Sunjin immediately realizes this might be the hidden piece of the raid. The moment Hiro says the ghost should be easy to spot from far away, Sunjin mutters hidden to himself and decides to move now. Sunjin activates Swift Paw, his wolf-clawed boots shift, and he explodes into the darkness at a speed the others can barely process. Henrik and Kulta can only stare, but Hiro still chases after his self-declared sensei into the dark. Sunjin tears through Grey Soul Cemetery at night, and Swift Paw boosts him so hard he actually has to slow himself down just to search properly. As he searches, Sunjin remembers the rumor about a pale blood-lipped woman and decides not to waste Treasure Hunter yet, because the ghost itself might already be the clue. 30 seconds later the burst of speed fades, and Sunjin is left staring at an endless sea of graves with no ghost in sight. Then he spots a white figure floating in the distance and locks onto it immediately. Elsewhere, Hiro tries to chase after his impossibly fast sensei anyway, still impressed even while losing him almost at once. A couple of minutes later Hiro finds the ghost again, freezes in fear, and notices Sunjin calmly standing right beside her. Sunjin tells him the ghost is non-hostile, but that does nothing to stop Hiro from trembling a few steps back. The ghost raises her hands, points into the distance, and gives another strained cry, and Sunjin realizes she is trying to lead them somewhere. When the ghost starts floating away, Sunjin follows without hesitation, and Hiro nervously trails after them. After a long walk, the ghost stops again, and Sunjin decides he needs firelight to see what she found. Sunjin coats his katana with salamander's ash, and the blade flares into a torch that lights up the hidden spot. Under the ghost, the firelight reveals a stone crypt door engraved with twin girls standing back to back. Sunjin cuts the crypt door open, and the ghost suddenly screams in a way that sounds relieved instead of hostile. The ghost dives into the opening, and Hiro panics at the sight of bones inside while Sunjin leans in without flinching. When Hiro asks if he is not afraid of ghosts, Sunjin answers with a blunt line that slips out of his past life: he'd already died once. Sunjin heads into the cramped crypt alone, and Hiro immediately decides waiting outside is the safer choice. Deep inside the damp bone-filled columbarium, Sunjin finds the ghost waiting for him as if this was her true destination all along. The ghost points more carefully this time, and Sunjin follows her finger to a single brick jutting slightly out from the wall. He pulls the loose brick free and reaches into the hollow space hidden behind it. From inside the wall he draws out a long wrapped object that keeps sliding free like a buried sword. The wrappings snap loose to reveal a katana in a miserable old scabbard, ugly on the outside but clearly important. The moment Sunjin draws it, a pristine blue glowing blade appears from that ruined shell and stops him cold. As if her job is finally done, the ghost dissolves into smoke and is pulled straight into the sword. The operator confirms it. Sungjin has found the hidden piece, the legendary possessed sword Moon Spectre. Looking over the weapon's absurd stats, Sungjin realizes this legendary katana will make the next stretch of enemies feel paper thin. He also catches the real twist in the weapon design. Its mind-scaling and mana-draining passive make it perfect for a magic swordsman. For now, he shelves the bigger decision, sheathes Moon Spectre, and heads back out with the hidden piece hanging at his side. Outside the crypt, Hiro rushes up in relief, and Sungjin calmly confirms the ghost never meant to hurt anyone. Hiro immediately insults the new sword's awful appearance, and Sungjin decides explaining its value is not worth the trouble. Instead, Sungjin quietly stores his old basic katana away and keeps Moon Spectre equipped. With only about 14 minutes left before extraction, Sungjin finally spends Treasure Hunter to ask for the hidden boss clue. The hint tells him the cemetery is a necromancer's farm, and if he destroys that farm, the one tending it will have to step in. Sungjin lowers his eyes to a nearby gravestone and realizes exactly what the hint is asking him to destroy. He gives a brief apology to the dead stranger buried there, then cuts the tombstone clean in half. Hiro is stunned less by the destruction than by the sword itself, because the ugly scabbard hid a blade shining bright blue in the dark. When a rough cough echoes through the cemetery, both of them go still, because neither undead nor nearby hunters should sound like that. Sungjin tests the clue by smashing more tombstones, and each one brings the hidden cough louder and closer. Now sure he has the right trigger, Sungjin orders Hiro to stop watching and start wrecking graves too. The two of them tear through grave after grave, and the coughing escalates into a furious voice shaking the whole cemetery. The cubes announce the hidden boss, Gravekeeper Oryx, but even after summoning him, Sungjin still cannot see where the necromancer is hiding. Annoyed by the wasted time, Sungjin reactivates Swift Paw and launches into another high-speed search for the boss. Meanwhile, far from him, Henrik and Kulto are relaxed and talking near the Old Lich battlefield when that same nasty coughing cuts through the night. The hidden boss warning reaches them too, and Akana instantly senses a large enemy force closing in. A sickly green light flares in the distance, and an undead tide of ghouls, zombies, and skeletons starts flooding across the cemetery toward them. Oryx's amplified voice accuses them of defiling his cemetery, and Henrik and Kulta silently agree they need to run for Kei and Hiro. But Oryx casts Frenzy first, and the front line of ghouls explodes forward too fast for them to escape. The entire horde surges under the same buff, and their desperate retreat turns into a hopeless last stand. Sungjin hears the spell from afar, locks onto the sound, and races toward it at full speed. He arrives just in time to see Kulta get torn apart by ghouls, and the rescue is already too late. Henrik runs towards Sungjin begging for help, while Akana is still barely holding the front line against the swarm. Oryx follows with Decay of Death, and the rotting spell starts eating through Akana's arm from the fingertips. The shock makes Akana drop his spear, and the undead wave tramples him before Sungjin can break through. Sungjin cuts into the zombie wall with Moon Spectre, and the new sword tears through them even more easily than his old blade ever did. Another Decay of Death forces Sungjin to dodge back, and in that opening Akana vanishes under the swarm for good. Then Oryx raises the dead hunters back up, turning Kulta's torn body and Akana's fresh corpse into his slaves. Henrik breaks down in horror, and Sungjin's patience finally snaps at the sight of hunters being used like puppets. That rage stirs Yanhurat again, and the necklace starts whispering for Sungjin to kill. While Sungjin fights that murderous whisper, reanimated Akana suddenly lunges in with a spear thrust aimed straight at his neck. The attack is nowhere near enough to beat Sungjin, and he calmly knocks it aside despite recognizing the skill behind the strike. He apologizes under his breath and cuts Akana down a second time, hating every second of it. With Hiro calling from behind and Henrik falling apart nearby, Sungjin makes up his mind to end this by going straight for Oryx himself. Sungjin swears he will kill the Gravekeeper with everything he has and charges straight into the undead swarm. In Grey Soul Cemetery, Sungjin keeps cutting through swarms of zombies, skeletons, and ghouls, but Oryx just keeps raising more from the endless graves. The fight stalls out, and even with Yanhurat whispering for more killing, Sungjin forces himself to stay in control. When Kulta fires at him from afar, Sungjin casually catches the arrow in his bare hand and realizes these undead enemies never react with fear. That gives Sungjin an idea, but before he moves, Oryx casts Frenzy, and the whole undead mob surges even faster. Instead of panicking, Sungjin sheathes Moon Spectre and waits until the swarm closes in around him. Then he draws the blade and unleashes Deathly Wail, filling the cemetery with a ghostly scream. The effect is brutal. Undead that ignored pain and danger suddenly stampede away in blind terror, trampling each other to escape him. Even Oryx starts backing away, shaking as he stares at Moon Spectre and tries to say something about that sword. Sungjin does not let him finish. He steps in and takes Oryx's head off in one clean strike. The moment Oryx dies, every remaining undead body drops lifeless at once, and the raid instantly ends with the hidden boss cleared. Seeing how completely Deathly Wail shut down the battlefield, Sungjin realizes Moon Spectre is even stronger than he expected. But the skill had also hit the living. Henrik is on the ground trembling, and Hiro is still fleeing in the distance. That victory sours when Sungjin spots Akana and Kulta dead on the ground and blames himself for bringing out a hidden boss they could not survive. Henrik steadies him by reminding him they have only been sent to purgatory, so if the raids are completed, they can still come back. Hiro comes back too and tells Sungjin that with his skill, the dead hunters would have trusted him to carry everyone to the end. Their words calm him enough to bow his head and silently pray over Akana and Kultu, asking them to believe in him. The operator breaks the silence with raid rewards, and Sungjin sees his huge contribution turn into a massive haul of points and coins. When the item rewards arrive, Sungjin keeps the 3 equipment pieces and stores the rest away for later. The title rewards follow, and Sungjin quietly receives Elite Samurai, a top-tier katana title that pushes his damage even higher. Sungjin confirms there will be no debriefing at Hunter's Hall, only a direct return to the black market, which matches what he remembered. With time left, Hiro asks the question he has been holding back the whole raid: what exactly are hidden bosses? Sungjin first refuses, because hidden bosses are deadlier than normal bosses and he does not want to push an eager kid towards suicide. Hiro argues that seeing 3 heroic drops from one raid makes him want that same strength, and he insists he still wants to know. So Sungjin tells the blunt truth: every chapter seems to have a hidden boss, they are incredibly powerful, and he is still figuring them out himself. Even after hearing that, Hiro says he may start searching next chapter, which makes Sungjin stop him immediately. Sungjin lays down a hard rule: only look for a hidden boss if all 5 teammates survive the regular boss and the whole party is strong enough to handle something even worse. Hiro finally accepts the warning, and Sungjin hopes that much caution will keep him from getting reckless. Sungjin is just about to inspect his new gear when the return countdown cuts in and forces the moment closed. At the end of the raid, Hiro promises to be stronger next time, and Sungjin answers with a harsh truth that weakness does not survive for long. Henrik awkwardly thanks both of them for helping him survive, and the 3 hunters vanish back to the black market together. Back in the black market, Sungjin heads straight to a quiet street-side tea shop so he can finally examine what he won. Inside First Drop, the panda shop owner Shio Ran serves him royal blend black tea, giving him a calm place to think. He starts with the freezing mantle and immediately recognizes how useful its near-instant damage reduction will be against unavoidable attacks. Satisfied, Sungjin equips the mantle, and the icy cape settles lightly across his back with only a faint chill. Next he checks Oryx's bell, then remembers Kane and decides to keep the summon-boosting accessory for now. The Lich Finger ring is ugly, but its mana recovery and spell boosting are too good to ignore, especially now that Sungjin is considering magic. That choice marks a real shift for him, because unlike his last life as a pure swordsman, this time he plans to grow into a magic swordsman. He equips the Lich Finger anyway, and the bone curls around his ring finger with an ugly little creak. Once the gear is sorted, Sungjin pulls out his spell books and starts learning the magic he picked up in the raid. He memorizes Frostbite first, adding a freezing bind spell to his toolkit even if he is not sure yet when he will need it. Then he memorizes Rise of the Dead too, giving himself a necromancy option to test in future raids. Before leaving, he studies Moon's Spectre itself and confirms the legendary katana gives him fear control, mana recovery, and strong scaling for both swordplay and magic. Pleased with the weapon's potential, Sungjin finishes his tea, thanks the shopkeeper, and heads out toward Last Edge. At Kenneth's katana shop, Sungjin asks to see Blood Vengeance again and feels the old pull of the sword he once relied on. But nostalgia is not enough this time, and Sungjin admits he cannot justify buying it now that Moon's Spectre is already in his hand. Instead, he sells off his old basic katana for a tiny amount, because he has fully moved on from starter gear. When he checks his coin total, Sungjin realizes he only needs 4,022 more black coins and decides the next chapter will finish the book he has been saving for. Back at 99 Nights, Kane rushes over healthy and excited, and Sungjin warmly praises him for surviving the raid. Inside, Dalyupin greets them, and Sungjin orders cheesecake for himself and raw lamb for Kane without even thinking twice. As the food arrives, Dalyupin quietly sets down the next raid information, but Sungjin only notes the title Giant's Canyon and saves the details for after dinner. Early the next morning at 99 Nights, Sungjin comes downstairs ahead of schedule and quietly orders breakfast for himself and Kane. Before eating, Sungjin asks Dalyupin for pen and paper because he wants to plan his stat build carefully instead of guessing. Sungjin calls for his status window and starts writing down his huge pool of unspent points, knowing his current combat stats are already strong enough to crush the next few chapters. Even so, he decides to keep feeding strength and dexterity hard, because swordsmanship is still the core of his power, and he wants it to stay overwhelming. He also adds 500 points to endurance as insurance, since hidden bosses can still surprise him with attacks he has never seen. The real problem is magic, so Sungjin asks the operator how mana cost works and learns each spell costs its class level multiplied by his magic power. Since he has almost no experience as a mage, he settles on a simple test build and splits the rest of his points evenly between magic power and mind power. Only after finishing the plan does Sungjin notice Dalyupin already set down his sandwiches, and he finally starts eating while giving the operator the full stat allocation. His new status jumps sharply, especially his mana pool, and Sungjin immediately calculates how many times he can cast Frostbite or Rise of the Dead in the next raid. When the operator announces the raid starts in 30 minutes, Sungjin relaxes at last, finishes breakfast, and waits to be sent out. A moment later, he is teleported into Giant's Canyon, a massive red canyon lit by the setting sun and lined by towering stone walls. The operator warns that this is where giants live, but Sungjin barely reacts because he already believes he can clear the next several chapters safely on his own. As the team sync completes, Sungjin lazily checks the other hunters' titles until one of them makes him snap fully awake. The title Elite Sniper belongs to a woman, and that alone is rare enough to stun him for a second. When Sungjin gets a better look, he recognizes her as Saran Han, the famous Korean archery gold medalist whose beauty made her a celebrity even outside sports. Sien-won excitedly recognizes Saran as the famous gold medalist and reaches out like a fan, but she answers with a cold little nod and leaves his handshake hanging. Sungjin sizes up the last two strangers fast. Raj looks like a heavy guardian built to tank hits, while Santiago's dagger and exposed arm tattoo give off a far more dangerous feeling. With 3 minutes left, Sien tries to gather everyone into a strategy huddle, but the whole team stays stubbornly silent and Sungjin almost enjoys how antisocial they are. Sungjin quietly fixes his own priorities instead: find the hidden piece, kill the hidden boss, collect rare loot, and test his new magic on the way. Sungjin idly slides Moon Spectre partway free, and the blade's blue glow immediately catches Saran's eye through the sword's battered disguise. Their eyes meet for a beat, then Saran turns away without a word and Sungjin gives up on trying to read her icy attitude. When the raid objective appears, the awkward silence still holds, so Sien starts formal introductions himself to force the team into acting like a party. Sien introduces himself first, and after he nudges them along the others give clipped answers. Saran is Korean, Raj is Indian, Santiago is Mexican, and Sungjin only says his name is K. Santiago casually cleans his nails with his dagger, and the tattoo on his arm gives Sungjin a bad feeling about just how violent this man might be. When it is his turn, Sungjin gives only the name K, and when Sien asks if that means he is Japanese, Sungjin coolly brushes off the question as meaningless. After everyone lays out their jobs, Raj as the tank, Santiago as the knife killer, and Saran as the archer, Sungjin suddenly makes things interesting by claiming he is a mage. To sell the lie, Sungjin casts Frostbite before the raid even starts and freezes a patch of ground with bright blue magic. Sungjin immediately notices the spell's area is much smaller than a true high-level caster's, but to the others it is still impressive enough to make them stare. When Sien points at the sword on his hip, Sungjin shrugs and lies again, saying he just picked it up somewhere so he would have something to hold. The battered sheath makes the lie believable for everyone except Saran, because she already saw the blue blade hidden inside. Sien brightens up at the idea of having both a gold medal archer and a mage, while Sungjin decides he will stay with the group briefly just to watch Saran fight. Saran ties her hair back into a ponytail for battle, and that one practical motion makes her look even more like a real professional. As the countdown hits 0, the 5 hunters enter the canyon in formation, with Raj at the front and Sungjin lingering all the way at the rear. As they walk, Saran throws a dry jab that the mage should be at the very back, and Sungjin calmly answers that he already is. Her only reply is a blunt liar, leaving Sungjin to wonder whether she means the class, the position, or both. Their first target appears fast, a giant ogre with a huge hammer charging down the canyon path. Raj baits the ogre's hammer with his shield, and Sien lunges in to stab its arm, only to get hauled off the ground when the monster grabs his spear. Before Sien can be crushed, Saran calmly plants an arrow into the ogre's eye, showing off absurd accuracy on a moving target in live combat. As the blinded ogre howls and drops the spear, Santiago appears on its back and slices open its neck with brutal precision. Once the ogre is helpless, Raj and Sien finish it together, proving the team can actually function when everyone does their part. But the noise draws 2 more enraged ogres straight at them, and this time Sungjin decides to help a little. His frostbite locks both ogres in place, pinning them where they stand and turning them into easy targets. Saran instantly follows with rain of arrows, and a single shot multiplies into a deadly shower that hammers the immobilized giants from above. The arrow storm leaves Sien, Raj, and Santiago staring for a beat, until Saran snaps at them and the 3 finally rush the trapped ogres. Once the 2 ogres are down, Sien and Raj relax and praise how balanced the party feels, while Saran only looks at the corpses with visible disgust. Then Santiago asks the obvious question, because while they were celebrating, the so-called mage vanished without a trace. Sungjin is already sprinting deep into the canyon alone, because this chapter's single straight path makes it perfect for rushing the main boss first. His plan is simple: kill the boss fast, then use the rest of the hour to hunt down the hidden boss and hidden piece. Even while racing ahead, he keeps thinking about Saran's archery and realizes her bow must be a seriously powerful heroic weapon or better. About half a minute into the dash, Sungjin deliberately eases his speed for a moment, and a nearby 2-headed Etin takes the bait and charges him. Sungjin can't help smiling at his own fake mage act, then draws Moon Spectre and cuts the Etin in half before the thought even finishes. He flicks the blood from the blue glowing blade, sees the canyon packed with more ogres and Etins ahead, and charges straight into the chapter he likes best for its brutal simplicity. Saran opens the next fight by driving an arrow straight through one head of an Etin and instantly turning the giant's fury toward the party. As the enraged Etin charges in, Xian calls the pull and Raj plants himself in front like a wall to take the hit. Raj triggers Iron Wall of Andal, and his shield flares with lion-shaped runes before swelling into a castle-sized barrier. The Eden's club shatters against Raj's defense, leaving it stunned just long enough for Xian to drive his spear into its chest. Santiago dives past Xian with slice and dice spinning on both daggers, turning the stagger into a savage opening. Before the Eden can recover, Saran calmly sends the finishing shot through its last head and drops it on the spot. Watching the teamwork, Xian is genuinely impressed because Raj tanks, Santiago shreds, and Saran controls every fight from start to finish. With Case still missing, Raj casually checks his health and reveals he has over 9,000 HP because surviving the front line is his whole job. Saran tells Raj to top off before the boss, and he answers with cheap flirting that instantly makes the mood more awkward. Xian changes the subject to the missing mage, but no one knows where Kay went, and all they can see behind them is a canyon full of bodies. When Xian worries about facing the boss with only 4 people, Raj reminds him they do not get to back out of a raid objective just because it looks bad. So the 4 of them keep pushing deeper, using the same clean rhythm. Saran pulls, Raj anchors, and the others finish whatever comes at them. Elsewhere in the canyon, Sungjin is moving alone so fast that even an ogre's mace cannot touch him before Moon's specter carves an X across its chest. An Etten and a giant Trog swing at him together, and Sungjin answers by freezing Sail's breath into a rigid shield with one sharp command. The clubs slam into the frozen mantle and bounce off uselessly, showing Sungjin just how absurdly effective the icy defense really is. Once the mantle loosens again, Sungjin cuts both monsters' weapon arms clean off and finishes them before they can land a single blow. Standing on the ogre corpse, Sungjin finally spots the boss hall ahead and realizes he reached the end with almost 40 minutes still left. Before going in, Sungjin tests Rise of the Dead on the ogre and raises it as his first undead servant. The revived ogre obeys his first order, but it lurches after him so slowly that Sungjin immediately realizes the spell is much weaker than he hoped. He even tests the zombie by telling it to attack him, and the strike is so slow that he can dodge it with the smallest lean. Comparing it to the necromancer he remembers from his past life, Sungjin gives up on using this weak undead at the boss and orders it to drop dead again. Then he remembers the strange bell Manyata, confirms it can affect undead, and quietly decides to test that trick later. A quick mana check makes him realize he reached the boss with barely enough MP for one frostbite, and not enough to cast Rise of the Dead again. To fix that, Sungjin uses Lich's Beckoning on a corpse and drains blue mist-like mana back into the finger wrapped around his ring finger. With his mana restored to full, Sungjin heads into the boss hall and finally draws the attention of Patch and Chorak. The boss reveal is immediately ridiculous. One head insists they are a warrior, the other insists they are a mage, and they start arguing before the fight even begins. Sungjin is annoyed because he remembers these loud brothers from before, but he still raises Moon's Spectre and accepts the challenge. Back with the other team, a Trog fight suddenly goes wrong when hidden reinforcements start pelting rocks from the side. Raj gets nailed in the head and drops, forcing Santiago to pull back instead of going for his usual flank. When the hunters look up, they spot 2 Trogs higher up hurling stones like ambushers from the canyon side. Saran instantly switches targets and pins one Trog through the hand, making it drop its rock onto its own feet. She tries to line up the second thrower too, but that Trog launches a rock at Saran before she can get clear. Xian jumps in front of her and breaks the stone, but the shattered fragments tear into him badly enough to drive him to his knees. Saran uses the opening Xian bought her and calmly shoots down the second Trog before it can grab another stone. Then she finishes the first Trog with 2 rapid arrows, leaving Raj and Santiago to clean up the last enemy in front of them. Bruised and bleeding, the party finally pauses because their careful 1 versus 4 plan keeps getting ruined by surprise reinforcements. As Raj complains, Xian says he thinks the extra enemies are crawling up through tunnels under the canyon floor. Then the operator suddenly announces the boss has appeared, and the whole team snaps back into fighting stance even though nothing is in sight. In the boss hall, Sungjin decides the mage head has to go first and charges straight for the staff side. Chorak casts haste, and the whole boss suddenly moves several times faster than a normal ogre should. Sungjin's opening melee fails because the warrior head can block his rapid sword strikes while the whole body pivots around the mage's support. The mage head even lunges in with the staff like a melee fighter, forcing Sungjin back just in time for a giant fireball. Sungjin shields himself with the icy mantle, but the blast still scorches him enough to cost him HP for the first time since restarting. While the boss mocks him, Sungjin admits this pair is a real problem alone because their melee and magic cover each other's openings perfectly. So Sungjin pulls out Grand Kin's wooden figurine and summons Kane to split the boss's attention. Sungjin orders Kane to take the left head while he keeps the warrior busy on the right. But the boss reacts fast and throws up a firewall, cutting Kane off from the mage head while Sungjin is already trapped in close combat. Sungjin keeps dodging both the club and the staff at once, then quietly rings the bell he prepared for this moment. At the sound of the bell, Kane blasts straight through the firewall unharmed and clamps onto the mage head's throat. The mage screams for Patch to help, finally letting Sungjin sort out which head is which. Patch turns to save his brother, and the instant that opening appears, Sungjin cuts both of the warrior's hands off. With Patch crippled, Chorok is left alone with a staff and no answer for Sungjin's speed. Sungjin wounds the boss again, and when Chorok tries to cast another spell, Kane jumps the throat a second time and cuts the incantation off. That is all Sungjin needs to split Patch and Chorok in half and end the raid. When the raid clear message appears, Sungjin realizes the fight actually pushed him hard enough to make him sweat for the first time since the restart. Kane trots over for praise, and Sungjin checks him over in relief because the bell's protection let the wolf crash through fire and club swings without a scratch. Sungjin ends up genuinely thanking Kane for charging through the flames, and the wolf answers with a proud happy howl. Far away in the canyon, the other 4 hunters are stunned when the operator suddenly announces the boss is already dead and the raid is cleared. They cannot believe Kay cleared the boss alone, so they press deeper to see what actually happened. What they find is worse than expected. The canyon ahead is carpeted wall to wall with giant corpses. Even Saran looks shaken, and Sien can only ask what kind of monster could have done all this. Then Raj quietly pulls Sien closer and suggests that with the raid already over, the 3 men could have some fun with Saran. Sien recalls in disgust the moment he understands what Raj means and starts to protest. He never gets the words out, because Santiago suddenly buries a dagger in Sien's side. With the boss already down, Sungjin sheathed Moon's specter and hesitated over one thing: whether Treasure Hunter should be saved for a hidden place or a hidden boss. Before he can decide, Kane suddenly howls toward the canyon they came from and acts like he has found something urgent. Sungjin tells Kane to lead the way at full speed, and the wolf immediately bolts off like every second matters. Kane is so fast that Sungjin has to trigger Swift Paw just to keep up with him through the canyon. Elsewhere, Sien staggers back with a dagger buried in his abdomen as Raj blocks him head-on, and the party suddenly turns on itself. Saran only realizes the betrayal when Santiago drives a second dagger into Sien, and the sight of teammates killing each other shocks her more than the monsters ever did. Sien uses his last breath to tell Saran to run, and Raj crushes his head before he can say anything more. As soon as Sien dies, red light marks Raj and Santiago as trolls, and the raid cube announces they can now be killed without passing that penalty on. Santiago ignores the warning and charges Saran anyway, turning the ambush straight toward her. Saran shoots him in the shoulder, but he keeps coming with the arrow still stuck in him. He gets inside her range, bats away her defense, and knocks Saran's bow out of her hands. Saran draws her backup dagger, but Santiago easily disarms her and seizes her wrist before she can turn the fight around. To stop her from resisting, Santiago stabs through Saran's hand and nails it to the ground. With Saran helpless, Santiago starts tearing open her clothes, and Raj crudely warns him not to damage what he wants. A wolf slams into Santiago out of nowhere before he can go any further. Raj spins around in alarm and finds the missing Master Hunter K standing right behind him at last. One look at the red outlines, Sien's corpse, and Saran on the ground tells Sungjin exactly what happened. Sungjin admits he is no hero, but he has no intention of letting trolls like this survive to become a future problem. Raj decides a mage has to be crushed fast and charges first, only for Sungjin to sever his attacking arm in one lazy swing. Even after losing an arm, Raj tries to fall back behind his expensive shield and tank through the fight. Raj activates Iron Wall of Anvil, but Sungjin cuts the enlarged shield clean in half as if it were paper. Raj finally understands something is horribly wrong when the man he called a mage starts carving through armor, flesh, and bone with one sword stroke. When Raj's HP warning screams that he is nearly dead, Sungjin casually reveals his own stats are even higher and crushes Raj's last bit of hope. Sungjin moves in to finish Raj for spilling human blood, but Saran shoots first and drives an arrow straight through Raj's forehead. Sungjin turns to see Saran holding the bow again, looking pitiful and furious at the same time after everything she just endured. Sungjin scans the canyon for the second troll, but Santiago is already gone, leaving only Kane standing off by himself as a sign of what happened. When Sungjin checks Kane, he finds small purple cuts around the wolf's neck and realizes Santiago poisoned him with paralysis before fleeing. Unable to let Kane suffer any longer, Sungjin praises him, sends him back to the inn, and unsummons him into his wooden figurine form. Saran keeps trying to cover herself while silent tears run down her face, and Sungjin awkwardly checks whether she is all right. He makes it clear he is not interested in her, but he cannot leave her alone with a poisoned assassin still out there, so he offers protection if she follows him. Sungjin starts back toward the canyon search, and Saran wraps herself in a ripped shirt and follows without a word. As they move on, Sungjin keeps searching for hidden pieces while watching for the escaped assassin and checking that Saran is settling down behind him. Sungjin asks if she noticed anything strange on the way in, hoping she may have seen a concealed area without realizing it. Saran dryly points out that this whole canyon is already full of weird monsters, so his question is too vague to help. When Sungjin narrows it down to something especially out of place, Saran still says she saw nothing because she spent the whole raid focused on killing and escaping. With no useful lead from Saran, Sungjin quietly decides that if the search keeps failing, he will spend Treasure Hunter later instead of right away. Then Saran changes the mood by probing his fake name and trying to guess which country he really comes from. Sungjin refuses to answer, but Saran tests him with a question about Korean stew and catches his reaction before he can hide it. She confidently concludes he must be Korean, and Sungjin realizes she is much sharper than he expected. When Sungjin asks why his nationality matters, Saran finally softens and says the woman he saved should at least know who to thank. She finally thanks him with a small beautiful smile, and even Sungjin's hardened heart stirs for a second. Sungjin cuts the moment short by checking the remaining raid time and goes right back to searching the canyon. Much later, Saran suddenly points out one ordinary-looking canyon wall and says that exact spot feels wrong. Drawing on her time in America, Saran explains that natural canyon layers should look irregular and varied, but this section is too straight and artificially patterned. Once Sungjin looks closer, he sees she is right, and the fake wall starts cracking the moment he touches it. Behind the cracked stone is a slick white surface, and then a huge black pupil turns to stare straight at him. The ground starts shaking as the operator confirms the hidden boss has appeared, the king of giants, Cyclops. A gigantic hand rises out of the cliff and the hidden boss starts pulling its impossible body free from the canyon itself. When the full monster stands up, even Sungjin is struck by its size, because this Cyclops towers over everything they have fought so far. The Cyclops roars hard enough to shake the earth, and Saran instinctively tries to blind it with an arrow to the eye. Her shot never reaches the target, because the giant casually swats it away in midair. Saran falters at the sight of something this overwhelming, but Sungjin tells her to stay back and rushes in to test the monster himself. The Cyclops tries to crush him with one foot, and Sungjin barely slips out of the massive shadow before it lands. Sungjin counters by slashing one of its toes, proving he can hurt it, but the scale difference makes every wound feel tiny. A huge fist crashes down next, and when the giant opens its hand to grab him, Sungjin has to harden Sail's breath just to survive the catch. He breaks free by cutting into the giant's finger, then dances through its angry stomping and realizes brute force alone will take too long. So Sungjin changes tactics and decides the only real answer is to climb the monster and strike somewhere fatal. He baits out another punch, dodges by a hair, and jumps onto the giant's hand the instant it slams down. When the Cyclops notices him riding its wrist, Sungjin drives Moon Spectre into its hand and hangs on for dear life as the giant thrashes wildly. Just as Sungjin is about to be shaken loose, Saran reaches the canyon rim and lines up a support shot at the giant's eye. She fires rain of arrows straight at the giant's face, and the multiplied barrage hammers its eye area over and over. The Cyclops screams and raises both hands to shield its face, accidentally lifting Sungjin right to the target he wanted. Riding that opening, Sungjin rips his katana free, kicks off the giant's hand, and plunges straight into its huge eye while Saran watches from the canyon rim above. Clinging to the Cyclops, Sungjin drags Moon Spectre straight down its face and body, carving the giant open from eye to chest in one brutal finishing run. The hidden boss finally goes down, but Sungjin stays calm and uses his blade like a brake so he can slide safely down the collapsing giant. He lands on the canyon floor just before the giant crashes over the cliffside, and the impact buries the area in a choking storm of dust and debris. As he coughs his way out of the dust, the operator announces a nasty catch. The raid is complete, but rewards are frozen because a troll is still alive in the party. That warning hits him at once, and Sungjin realizes he forgot all about the hidden assassin during the Cyclops fight. Then Saran calls K through the dust in a nervous voice, and Sungjin charges toward the sound before he can see what is wrong. Santiago stops him cold by taking Saran hostage, pressing a dagger to her throat while another blade is already buried in her bleeding side. After exposing K as a swordsman and ordering him to disarm, Santiago keeps threatening Saran's life until Sungjin appears to give in. Sungjin slowly sheathes Moon Spectre and unties the scabbard, acting submissive just long enough to set up a counterattack. Instead of surrendering, he snap-draws the blade and unleashes Deathly Wail, filling the canyon with a hellish scream that shatters Santiago's nerve. The fear effect makes Santiago stumble back and loosen his grip, giving Sungjin the opening he needed. Sungjin closes the distance instantly, knocks both daggers away in 2 clean clashes, and drops Santiago with a hard kick to the chest. When Santiago tries to crawl away, Sungjin cuts off both his feet and coldly says this much is for Kane. Santiago begs for mercy, but Sungjin makes him sit in that terror for a few seconds because this is the fear he used to force on other victims. Once he decides Santiago has felt enough, Sungjin ends it with a single swing and sends the assassin's head flying. After flicking the blood from his katana, Sungjin turns away from the corpse and goes back to Saran. Saran is still shaking from Deathly Wail and the hostage ordeal, so Sungjin gently tells her the terrifying vision was fake and she is safe now. When she looks toward the body and understands Santiago is really dead, Saran thanks Sungjin with raw relief. The operator confirms all trolls are gone, and only then does the delayed raid reward finally begin. The raid score swings hard toward Sungjin, but Saran still gets a strong payout too after carrying her share of the fight from start to finish. Sungjin notices the Heart of Gold bonus pushes his coin reward just high enough for the amount he desperately needed. Item rewards follow, and Sungjin is briefly annoyed to receive only 2 heroic items before the operator suddenly reveals one of them is legendary. He stares at Camram, a strange ring set with 2 crimson gems fused together, and immediately knows this haul was far better than it first looked. Then the title rewards arrive, giving Saran a powerful headshot title and giving Sungjin an unexpected troll hunter title that lets him take extra gear from corrupted party members. With the rewards finished, Saran praises Kei's skill, and Sungjin awkwardly tries to acknowledge what she just survived. Saran answers with painful honesty, admitting this was not even the first time she had to fend off something like that in the raids. A return countdown appears with plenty of time left, and Sungjin decides he still has one more objective here, the hidden piece. He activates Treasure Hunter, and the operator answers with a riddle about a faraway merchant, giant cooking, and someone hung upside down by the toes. Sungjin works through the clue and realizes the key images are upside down and eating, which points to a giant cooking area somewhere deeper in the canyon. He asks Saran if she ever saw a giant-sized crock pot, and when she says no, he narrows the search to the later half of the map that only he reached. When Sungjin says he is going after a hidden element, Saran chooses to come with him because waiting alone beside Santiago's corpse would be unbearable. As they walk deeper into Giant's Canyon together, Saran starts asking the question that matters most to her now: are hidden bosses in every round? Sungjin confirms they are, and he admits he keeps hunting them because raw strength is the only way to stay alive in these raids. But when Saran asks if she should chase hidden bosses too, Sungjin warns that this is only sane if the entire 5-person team is strong, coordinated, and free of internal betrayal. Remembering why Saran keeps ending up in danger, he tells her to visit the black market mask shop and hide her real appearance before it costs her life again. Saran thanks him with a bright smile so unlike her usual cold front that Sungjin suddenly starts considering her as possible final team material. That thought turns serious as Sungjin explains the raids will eventually grind humanity down to only 5 survivors, which means the last team must be both strong and trustworthy. Before that grim talk can go any further, Saran spots the giant boiling pot they were looking for. Sungjin means to knock it over himself, but Saran argues that shooting it is safer than getting close to a pot full of boiling water. She activates her new ring's giant strength effect and fires a single arrow that punches straight through the massive pot. The pot drains, but nothing comes out, and for a moment Sungjin thinks he may have read the riddle wrong. Saran catches the next clue first, pointing out a suspicious tent beside a dead Etin near the pot. Inside the tent, Sungjin finds a strange back wall with a narrow gap, cold air flowing through it, and piles of butchered meat all around like a giant's hidden pantry. Then a desperate voice calls for help from the darkness behind the wall, and Sungjin finally sees a half-rat demi-human hanging upside down by his feet. The mystery resolves on the spot when the system announces that Sungjin has discovered the hidden vendor, wandering merchant Rough Han. Deep in the cave, Sungjin spots a rat man hanging from the ceiling and immediately guesses the screaming captive is another demi-human vendor. The rat man starts yelling for help so loudly that Sungjin is already annoyed before Saran even walks in. Saran steps into the hidden chamber, surprised by the strange place, and the rat man instantly starts shouting at her too. Sungjin cuts through the noise and has Saran shoot the rope while he prepares to catch the captive. Sungjin catches the rat man, recoils at the awful smell, and immediately throws him away in disgust. Once he catches his breath, the rat man thanks them, but Sungjin skips the pleasantries and demands the promised reward right away. Rough Han tries to dodge the payment by saying the real reward will come later, and Sungjin's expression turns cold. Sungjin draws Moon Spectre and presses the blade to the ratman's neck, making it clear that a fake promise is not going to work. Cornered by the blade, Rough Han insists his stash is hidden beyond the raid boundary, where anyone outside too long dies in 10 seconds. When Sungjin keeps the pressure on, the ratman panics and offers something else he is carrying right now. The moment Rough Han names the wandering merchant's mystery pouch, Sungjin is visibly shocked because he recognizes how valuable it is. Rough Han shoves the pouch into Sungjin's hands and begs to be released before he loses any more time chasing his hidden stash. Sungjin asks the operator for a quick identification and confirms the pouch is the same one-use heroic item that gives 1 legendary crafting material. Satisfied with that payout, Sungjin finally sheathes Moon Spectre and lets the ratman live. Rough Han tosses Saran a pouch too, calling her pretty, which only makes the awkward moment sharper. Debt paid, Rough Han drops to all fours and bolts to a tiny side tunnel, shouting that they can meet again in some future raid if they survive that long. After the hidden merchant vanishes, Sungjin focuses on the pouch and hopes this pull will finally give him the next East volume he needs. Sungjin explains to Saran that the pouch is an excellent one-use item, then decides there is no point saving it and uses roulette immediately. The pouch opens, a book pops out, and Sungjin's excitement crashes when it turns out to be Ancient Stories of the Middle East Part 2 instead of the East line he wanted. He rubs his forehead in regret, stuck with the wrong legendary book line and no good reason to build a second omnibus. Then Saran uses her own pouch, and another book appears in front of her. The operator identifies Saran's prize as Ancient Stories of the East Part 2, and Sungjin grabs her arm before he can stop himself. Realizing how he looked, Sungjin lets go and urgently explains that her book is the missing piece for a powerful completed item he has been building. Saran immediately offers to just give him the book as thanks for protecting her in the raid. Sungjin refuses the free handout and insists on a fair trade, while also pushing Saran to collect the Middle East set for her own survival. With only 10 minutes left before extraction, the two press their cubes together and complete the trade. Now holding East Part 2 at last, Sungjin realizes he only needs to buy the final volume in the black market to complete the set. Sungjin checks Saran's funds and learns she has around 5,000 black coins, just enough for the plan he is about to give her. He tells Saran to visit Gourmet's bookstore and, if she can, complete the Middle East book for herself. He adds one more warning and tells her to find the raccoon merchant's mask shop too, even though he does not know the shop's exact name. As the return timer drops to 1 minute, Saran finally asks the question she has been holding back. Will they ever meet again? Sungjin tells her raids are designed to bring surviving hunters together again, and promises they will meet if she can stay alive. That pushes Saran to ask for his real name before they part. When the final 10-second countdown starts, Sungjin hesitates, and only promises he will tell her if they meet again. Even in the last seconds, Sungjin repeats his warning about the mask shop and bookstore because he wants her to survive. At the very last moment, Saran tells him they should meet again, and the teleport cuts off whatever answer Sungjin was about to give. Back in the black market, Sungjin is left with the words unsaid and the sinking feeling that he may never see Saran again. Trying to steady himself, he heads to the tea shop first drop and sits in the same seat as before to inspect his rewards. The panda shopkeeper Shio Ran politely takes his order, giving the scene a brief calm after the raid. Once alone, Sungjin pulls out Camram, the strange twin gem ring from the raid, and asks what it actually does. The answer hits hard. Camram copies the dominant hand's weapon mastery to the other hand, effectively giving Sungjin full dual-wield potential. The panda shopkeeper drops off iced tea and rice cake while Sungjin is still frozen by how absurdly strong the ring is. After downing the cold tea, Sungjin equips Camram on his right ring finger and feels a strange rush of new bodily sensitivity. He wants to test it immediately, but realizes he no longer owns a second katana after selling the basic one. Then he remembers the long metal staff Manta and calls it out from his cube as a substitute offhand weapon. Reading Manta's details, Sungjin likes what he sees, especially the passive that rewards mixing weapon attacks and magic. He steps outside the shop and starts testing the ring's effect by swinging the staff with his left hand. When he draws Moon Spectre next, the blade moves just as naturally in the opposite hand, proving Camram really works. A dog demi-human guard immediately stops him from testing weapons in public, reminding Sungjin the market's security is strict. Back at his seat, Sungjin settles on the real implication of Camram. One day he can wield Moon Spectre and Blood Vengeance together. That dream runs straight into money problems when he checks his balance and realizes he can afford either East Part 3 or Blood Vengeance, but not both. This time he decides almost instantly to finish the book first, because that power will let him fight future raids with less strain. With his mind made up, Sungjin leaves the tea shop and heads straight for Gourmet's bookstore. Gourmet greets him like he expected this return, and Sungjin confidently pays 5,000 black coins for the last East volume. When Sungjin says he already found Part 2 in the raid, Gourmet is visibly impressed and quickly brings out the prepared final book. Sungjin has the operator pull out East Parts 1 and 2, then raises all 3 books and calls for them to combine. The 3 legendary materials fuse in a burst of light, completing the ancient omnibus romance of the 3 kingdoms. Elsewhere in his own market instance, Gerald Baltrin sits in a donut shop comparing his new offensive club against the defensive Skull Romabel he already owns. Before Baltrin can settle the choice, his cube suddenly interrupts with an announcement he has never heard before. In another instance, Hiro is still frustrated that his team cleared the canyon cleanly but never found the hidden boss he had hoped to track down. He wonders if his sensei managed it this time, too, just before his own cube issues the same strange alert. At the mask shop, Saran follows Sungjin's advice and starts asking the chatty raccoon merchant how much a mask can really change someone's appearance. The old merchant rambles that masks can change almost everything except combat ability, then pushes one towards Saran to try on. Just as Saran is about to put the mask on, the market-wide announcement cuts through every instance at once. The cube declares that Master Hunter has completed the legendary omnibus romance of the 3 kingdoms, and that every other copy will now be destroyed with a 500 coin refund. Across the market, the hunters who know enough to guess the name all reach the same answer in their own way. Master Hunter is K, the man named Sungjin. In Gourmet's shop, the fused ancient omnibus finally settles into Sungjin's hands as a real copy of Romance of the 3 Kingdoms. Even Gourmet is rattled that Sungjin finished the omnibus by chapter 4, and Sungjin leaves after thanking him for the trade. Walking through the black market, Sungjin reads the book's skill and savors the fact that this overpowered unique item is finally his from the very start. He decides he needs to test the book as soon as possible, then heads back to 99 Nights with it tucked away carefully. Back at the inn, Kane rushes over barking, and Sungjin is relieved to see every wound from the last raid has already vanished. Sungjin thanks Kane for his help, hugs him, and pauses when the dog suddenly feels bigger than before. Since Kane at least understands the word food, Sungjin drops the mystery for now and takes him inside to eat. Dalyupin welcomes him back, and Sungjin casually orders a heavily loaded cheese pizza for himself and lamb for Kane. While waiting for food, Sungjin pulls out the Crimson Fireball spell book and decides to memorize it immediately. The spell sinks into him in a burst of red light, and Sungjin learns both Fireball and its embarrassingly dramatic incantation. Dalyupin returns with the pizza and lamb, and Sungjin digs in while making sure Kane eats well too. The first bite is so good that Sungjin just stares at Dalyupin and silently gives him a thumbs up. Later in the bath, Sungjin studies his updated stats and decides his build still has to stay rooted in overwhelming sword-based physical power. He remembers how easily he ignored magic in real danger, then decides to boost magic power anyway so his spells are strong enough to matter when he does use them. After some annoying math, Sungjin has the operator calculate the exact stat totals he wants for a physical core plus a stronger magic spike. He locks in the whole distribution at once and sinks deeper into the bath, finally able to breathe after a packed Chapter 4. Looking back on everything from trying magic and needing Saran Han to the Cyclops, the PK Trolls, Rough Han, and the completed omnibus, Sungjin realizes he is already far ahead of where he was in his previous life. That confidence darkens for a second when he remembers the old betrayal tied to Spellmaster Ed, a wound that still has no answer. He pushes that past aside and renews his resolve to keep clearing raids even if he has to do it alone. Back in his room, Moon Spectre and Romance of the Three Kingdoms on the table make him feel ready for whatever comes next, especially the future chase for blood vengeance. A late-night knock breaks the moment, and Daliapin brings the information page for the next raid. One look at the title Kyuten Desert is enough for Sungjin to confirm the raid order has not changed, so he throws himself into bed and immediately passes out. The next morning, the operator wakes him with 1 hour left before the raid, and Sungjin realizes he let himself sleep in for once. He confirms last night's stat build really happened, decides nothing urgent is left, and tries to grab 10 more minutes of sleep. Daliapin interrupts 5 minutes later with desert supplies, a magically refilling cold water skin and a long cloth for head protection. Since Sungjin already knows the Kyuten Desert routine, he cuts Daliapin off, takes the gear, and tells him they can handle the clothing later. After a quick shower, Sungjin opens the closet and reluctantly changes into the desert muslin outfit again, even though it still looks wrong on him. Downstairs, Kane greets him, and Sungjin quietly upgrades the dog's life by ordering him the best beef and regular full meals from now on. For himself, Sungjin picks a Korean breakfast with doenjang stew, and the choice makes him grin over a recent memory. He eats the hot meal and enjoys a brief, calm finish with fruit punch before the raid countdown crashes back in. With only 10 minutes left, Sungjin asks Daliapin to wrap the long cloth, and the innkeeper expertly ties it into a desert turban. Sungjin tests the ice-cold water skin, braces himself outside 99 nights, and gets teleported into the raid. He arrives in Kyuten Desert under brutal sunlight, where the heat alone already feels like part of the boss fight. As the operator warns that only violent monsters survive here, Sungjin already wants this raid over fast. The other hunters materialize one by one, and Sungjin instantly judges this as a strong team by their titles and gear. Sungjin sizes each man up in turn and quietly marks the Russian gladiator as especially dangerous and experienced. Then Sungjin notices why everyone keeps staring at him. The black market announcement about Master Hunter and the completed omnibus is still hanging over his head. The awkward silence finally breaks when the zealot introduces himself as Ralph and suggests they all do the same. Bukitai, Igor Janovic, and Munir Youssef each give their names and countries, revealing just how international this raid party is. When it is his turn, Sungjin bluntly claims to be Chinese, keeping his real background hidden without raising suspicion. Ralph pushes for teamwork, Munir agrees, Igor nods, and the desert heat is already pounding the group before the raid even starts. Instead of chatting, Sungjin is already thinking ahead to when he should use Romance of the Three Kingdoms, and how he is supposed to find the hidden boss in an endless sea of sand. The mission briefing confirms their target is the Basilisk with a full 2-hour limit, which tells Sungjin this desert raid will be rough even without surprises. As sweat pours off almost everyone except Munir, Sungjin drinks from the water skin and realizes the environment itself is draining the party before combat begins. When the 10-second countdown starts, Sungjin grips Moon Spectre and decides he is ending this raid fast, hidden boss or not. The raid countdown ends, and the 5 hunters step into the blazing Kyuten Desert in a cautious formation. Sungjin stays with the group only long enough to judge their level, already planning to split off and clear faster on his own. Bukitai takes point with shield raised, Igor follows as the main striker, Ralph and Sungjin trail behind, and Munir covers the rear with his crossbow. Their first enemy appears fast when a giant scorpion crawls up over the sand with its claws spread and stinger arched high. Munir opens with a burst of bolts, but the scorpion simply shields itself with its armored claws and keeps charging. Munir swaps to frost magic and barely slows the monster, but the small opening is enough for Bukitai to steady himself and rush in. Bukitai blocks the scorpion's claws head-on, proving he can hold the line even under pressure. When Munir warns about the tail too late, Igor flashes in, blocks the strike, and slices the stinger clean off in one smooth move. Watching Igor's speed and power, the missing 5th hunter quietly realizes this gladiator really is carrying top-tier stats. With the tail gone, the team quickly tears off the claws, Munir lands shots in the weak spots, and the first scorpion drops. The others start feeling confident, then suddenly realize Sungjin has already vanished. Bukitai barely catches a glimpse of Sungjin racing away through the heat shimmer before swift paw carries him out of sight. Far ahead, the missing 5th hunter stops alone to dump water over his head, already regretting how savage the desert heat is. He reminds himself the basilisk will appear after enough kills, so hunting solo is still the fastest way to pile up contribution points. He spots a desert lizard lying perfectly still in the sand and immediately sees through the ambush act. Instead of rushing it, he copies Munir's idea and casts Frostbite first, freezing the lizard's footing solid with far stronger magic. The trapped lizard finally breaks its act, but he reaches it first and cleanly beheads it with one overwhelming strike. Even headless, the body still lashes out, and he catches himself after almost forgetting that nasty detail. 3 giant scorpions rush him next, and he actually welcomes the extra targets. He carves through the first 2 before the third even arrives, turning the swarm into an easy one-on-one cleanup. Just as he settles for the last scorpion, the sand under his feet suddenly starts collapsing into a hidden sinkhole. Sungjin jumps clear in time, and a gigantic sandworm erupts where he was standing with a mouth full of jagged teeth. The timing is awful because the surviving scorpion is already on him, and another sinkhole starts forming the moment he tries to reposition. Annoyed but calm, Sungjin decides to use the scorpion as bait and strips off its claws and tail before the worm can strike again. He kills the helpless scorpion at the exact moment the sandworm lunges up to swallow it. Sungjin leaps free, lets the worm bite into the dead scorpion instead, and turns the opening into a point-blank trap. He fires a full fireball straight into the worm's open mouth, and the monster explodes from the inside in a column of flame. Once the flames settle, Sungjin admits the real danger here is not the mobs but his own bad habit of getting careless. Back with the team, the mood is much shakier as the 4 hunters spread out and nervously watch for another hidden worm. When the sand grabs Bukitai's legs, Munir throws him his turban like a rope and hauls him out just in time. The sandworm bursts out after missing Bukitai, and Munir immediately calls the attack. Munir's bolts, Ralph's leaping axe strike, and Igor's sword work finally start hurting the worm in earnest. The wounded worm thrashes in a huge circle, flinging Bukitai and Ralph away while Munir barely stays clear. Igor reads the terrain in a flash, dives into a shallow depression, and lets the worm rip itself apart on his waiting blade. After a brutal few exchanges, the worm finally dies, and the team is left rattled even though no one took a lethal hit. As Igor scans the horizon, distant dunes start shifting strangely without any wind. Before Bukitai can explain what he sees, the operator interrupts with a warning that the boss basilisk has appeared. Ralph is thrown because the boss should only appear after most of the raid is done, and Munir realizes someone has already driven the clear rate past 75%. Elsewhere, Sungjin drops another fireball into a sandworm's mouth, and feels just how punishing this heat and mana cost are becoming. He knows fireball is perfect for sandworms, but with his current stats each cast burns through more than half his mana pool. To recover, Sungjin points his bone ring at the corpse and uses Lich's beacon while cooling himself with more water. Right in the middle of that break, the operator warns that the basilisk has appeared. He checks the raid progress, realizes the boss probably spawned near the others, and worries they could get wiped before he gets there. Sungjin summons Kane and asks him to track the hunters by smell or sound. Kane quickly finds the direction, but the desert heat is so extreme the poor dog can barely stand. Seeing Kane suffer, Sungjin immediately unsummons him and takes off alone. Back at the team, the basilisk rises over the dunes like a living dinosaur and freezes everyone for a beat with its size alone. Igor takes command at once and reminds them of the core rule: never meet its eyes unless they want to be petrified. Ralph admits his zealot axe can spike his damage hard, but the skill will cut his current health in half after the burst ends. Igor tells Ralph to wait for his signal, then gives Bukitai a rough but workable plan to block by watching the basilisk's shadow instead of its face. Bukitai advances with his shield covering his view, trying to fight a boss he is not allowed to look at. The basilisk charges, and Bukitai starts reading its footwork by the shifting shadow on the sand. Even half-blind, Bukitai manages to block a series of heavy kicks and buys the others a chance to attack. Then the basilisk's slimy tongue whips around Bukitai's body and yanks him into the air. Bukitai accidentally looks up into its amber eyes and goes rigid on the spot, still conscious but unable to move. Before the basilisk can swallow him, Igor throws his round shield like a blade and nearly severs the monster's tongue. Bukitai crashes down, the paralysis starts fading after only a few seconds, and he scrambles to get back in the fight. But the boss abandons him to chase Igor instead, and the whole battle line instantly starts collapsing. Ralph makes one bad glance at the basilisk's face, gets stunned in place, and is kicked away hard. At the same time, Munir gets snared by the basilisk's tail and lifted helplessly into the air. Bukitai blames himself for losing control of the front just as a familiar voice announces Sungjin has arrived in time. Sungjin uses Bukitai's shoulder as a launch point and throws himself straight at the basilisk's head. The basilisk turns to face the incoming threat, and Bukitai panics because Sungjin is flying directly into the petrifying gaze. Instead of freezing, Sungjin activates Free Arc in midair and drives Moon Spectre straight into one eye. The blinded beast lashes out, but Sungjin lands cleanly and dodges its savage kick with ease. Keeping his own eyes low, Sungjin circles to the side and blasts Fireball into the basilisk's remaining eye. With both eyes destroyed, the basilisk thrashes around blind, and Bukitai charges back in as the fight finally swings toward the hunters. Igor instantly calls the opening, Ralph triggers Zealot in a frenzy, and all 5 hunters pile onto the blinded boss together. The basilisk finally crashes into the sand, and the raid clear message ends the brutal desert fight. Bukitai checks the others in a rush, and one by one Igor, Ralph, and even praying Munir confirm they somehow survived without fatal injuries. With everyone alive, Bukitai lets himself breathe for the first time, because he always carries the guilt when someone dies on his watch. Then the missing hunter suddenly appears on top of the dead boss, calm as ever, and announces that he is leaving. Sungjin slides down the basilisk's tail like it is a ramp and sprints away so fast that Bukitai can only stare after him in confusion. With the danger over, the 4 survivors settle under the basilisk's shadow and trade shaken reactions about paralysis, near death, and the sand saving Munir from a deadly fall. Bukitai thanks Igor for saving him with that impossible shield throw, but Igor's cold silence feels wrong even after the raid is over. Igor suddenly asks the operator for his contribution, and the answer hits him hard, barely over 10%. He orders everyone else to check too, and the numbers are just as bad for Ralph, Munir, and Bukitai. The 4 veterans realize their combined share is not even 30%, which means one person did almost everything. They quietly pin it on the vanished Chinese hunter, and even the boss appearing out of nowhere suddenly makes sense. Igor refuses to waste the remaining time and pushes the others back into the desert to scrape together even a few more coins. Far away from them, Sungjin races across the Kutan desert alone, hunting for the hidden piece before the heat cooks him alive. The desert gives him nothing except annoying ambushes from lizards, and each one dies in a single clean slash from Moon's Spectre. He stops to soak himself with the magic water skin, scans the empty dunes, and still finds no clue where the hidden place is. He is tempted to burn a stronger search skill, but he holds back and checks whether Swift Paw is ready instead. Once Swift Paw comes back online, Sungjin kicks into high-speed search mode and tears across the dunes again. Then he spots a bluish glow in the distance, and immediately thinks he has found a real oasis hiding something important. But as he runs toward it, the oasis vanishes, and Sungjin realizes the desert is mocking him with a mirage. When he turns around, the same oasis is behind him again, and Sungjin chases it a second time until Swift Paw burns out at the worst moment. The same trick happens again and again, and by the third failed chase he feels less lost than deliberately toyed with. Sungjin finally snaps and shouts at the sky, and that is when something with a lion body, human face, and huge wings comes flying straight at him. Thinking he may have stumbled into a hidden boss, Sungjin draws Moon's Spectre and starts casting fire at the incoming Sphinx. Instead of a hidden boss alert, the operator warns that attacking this creature would count as hitting a non-hostile life form, so Sungjin cancels on the spot. The Sphinx lands in front of him and, with full riddle master drama, asks the young wanderer what he seeks in the desert. When Sungjin says he wants the oasis, the Sphinx offers to guide him there only if he can answer a riddle. Sungjin nods, but the Sphinx gets fussy and makes him answer out loud before it will continue. Its first question is the famous 4 legs, 2 legs, 3 legs riddle, and Sungjin answers man without even blinking. The Sphinx calls that one just a common-sense warm-up, then asks if he is truly ready for the real riddle. Sungjin humors the creature again, and this time the Sphinx finally delivers the true riddle about the first cut, proof of ties, and something useless you still cannot exist without. Sungjin barely needs a few seconds before he gives the answer, belly button. He explains that it is everyone's first scar, proof of the tie to their mother, useless now but impossible to be born without, and the Sphinx is left staring at him. For a second Sungjin even braces for betrayal, hand near Moon's Spectre, but the Sphinx only grumbles and admits he is correct. The creature seems more upset that Sungjin solved it too fast than that he solved it at all, and Sungjin cuts the whining short by demanding the oasis. Keeping its word, the Sphinx tells Sungjin to climb on, though it still sounds amused by the idea that he might fall and die on the way. The Sphinx launches without warning, and Sungjin grips tight as the desert drops away beneath them. From high above, Sungjin finally sees a real oasis in the distance as the Sphinx flies straight toward it. Back on the ground, Bukitai, Igor, Ralph, and Munir keep monster hunting for scraps of contribution when 2 giant lizards rush them at once. Munir slows one lizard with magic and the team prepares to burn the other down, but the sand suddenly starts moving under Bukitai's feet. A sandworm bursts out of the desert, forcing the hunters to spread out with the standard rescue plan they have used before. The plan immediately falls apart because both lizards focus Bukitai, while Munir admits he has no mana left to support him. Then Ralph shouts that the sandworm has targeted him instead, and Bukitai thinks the others can save him while he keeps the lizards busy. Instead, Bukitai hears Ralph scream in pain, then only the sounds of Munir's bolts, Igor's shield, and the sandworm dying. When Bukitai finally looks back, he sees the truth. Ralph is dead and severed in half, while Igor and Munir are just standing there watching. Bukitai begs them to help, but the moment he looks away too long, the lizards start carving him apart. Still getting no answer, Bukitai is disarmed and ripped to pieces, dying on his feet while staring at the 2 men who abandoned him. Only after Bukitai dies does Igor calmly take command, and the 2 of them cleanly finish the lizards together. Munir watches Igor fight in awe as the Russian dismantles one lizard piece by piece with cold precision. Once the second lizard falls too, both men immediately check the only thing that mattered to them now, contribution. Their shares have nearly doubled, and Munir grins as the ugly deal between them suddenly looks worth it. Igor accepts the handshake and bluntly explains why he picked Munir for the scheme. He had the lowest contribution and was the weakest one there. Munir barely gets to protest before Igor uses the handshake itself to trap him and slice off the hand he is holding. Munir stumbles back screaming and throws Frostbite in panic, freezing Igor in place long enough to demand why he is doing this at all. Munir sees from Igor's face that the penalty means nothing to him, and in pure panic he turns and runs for his life. Munir throws a second Frostbite to slow the chase, but a low mana warning tells him his magic is almost finished. He tries to use distance and desert terrain to survive until extraction, but Igor's shield whips out and smashes into his calf. The blow sends Munir tumbling right back down toward his killer, and with no mana and no weapon hand left, all he can do is beg. Igor answers the plea with a sword thrust, killing Munir anyway and triggering the troll penalty he had already decided was worth paying. As Munir bleeds out unheard, Igor coldly states the whole logic of it: even after the penalty, murder pays better. Meanwhile, the Sphinx warns Sungjin to hold on, then suddenly dives so hard that the ride becomes more punishment than transport. The Sphinx lands near the water in one brutal drop, and the system finally confirms that Sungjin has discovered the hidden oasis, Suleiman. Sungjin complains about the reckless landing, and the Sphinx smugly admits it did that on purpose because answering too fast ruined the fun. Before Sungjin can do anything about it, the Sphinx takes off again and leaves him with a promise he definitely does not want kept. Once the creature is gone, Sungjin turns toward the hidden oasis with a much better mood and starts searching for whatever treasure this place is hiding. Alone in the hidden oasis, Sungjin circles the small muddy waterhole and realizes it looks far less inviting than the fantasy version in his head. He finds no clue about the hidden pieces until a glint above the oasis catches his eye. The moment Sungjin steps into the water for the lamp, a huge crocodile bursts up and nearly catches him off guard. After the jump scare, Sungjin cuts the crocodile down in a few effortless slashes and keeps moving warily through the shallow water. With the oasis clear, Sungjin sheathes his sword and climbs the palm tree, already thinking how useful a flight spell would be for future raids. At the top, he finally reaches the prize, a filthy ancient lamp hidden in the leaves. The item window says only that rubbing the worn-out lamp has unknown effects, which makes Sungjin even more curious. After checking that the area is quiet, Sungjin starts scrubbing the lamp and waits for something dramatic to happen. Blue smoke pours out for so long that his excitement turns into impatient suspense. Then Sungjin looks up and sees the smoke forming a gigantic cloud giant high above the oasis. Elsewhere in the desert, Igor calmly confirms that killing his teammates gave him exactly the contribution he expected. The heat is so miserable that even this trained killer starts wondering whether the old world and his motherland even still matter. A harsh memory of his superior snaps him back into discipline, and Igor decides to keep hunting until the raid is as perfect as possible. He pushes through the desert alone, killing giant lizards and scorpions one by one with efficient military tactics. Soon Igor notices the corpses around him have already been sliced apart by a katana, which tells him the mysterious Chinese hunter is still ahead of him. Even after more hunting, the raid stalls at 94.2%, and that missing final chunk keeps bothering him. When he kills one last wandering lizard and reaches 95% again, Igor accepts that the remaining 5% must be hidden somewhere else. Then a distant rumble and a strange cloud draw his gaze toward a speck of green in the desert, an oasis. Convinced the oasis holds the answer, Igor activates Force March and sprints across the dunes. Back at the oasis, the giant finally speaks, and Sungjin eagerly assumes the lamp is about to grant wishes. Instead, the genie introduces himself as Soldamer and declares that Sungjin must be tested to earn the right to command him. The cube suddenly confirms the worst: Soldamer is the hidden boss. Sungjin drops the lamp, draws Moon Spectre, and barely avoids Soldamer's opening chain lightning. Even though he dodges the main blast, the lightning still bites into him through the water, soaking his clothes, and he realizes the oasis itself is now a trap. Sungjin retreats from the water, but Soldamer follows with an oversized fireball that forces him to harden Sail's breath into armor just to survive the blast. Realizing brute force will not be enough, Sungjin pulls out Romance of the Three Kingdoms and decides this hidden boss is exactly what he saved it for. But the genie keeps up the pressure with another lightning spell, leaving Sungjin desperate for even a few seconds to read. A close lightning strike numbs Sungjin's right arm, and he instantly turns the dead crocodile into an undead distraction. He rings Manhwa to speed the zombie forward, and the sudden decoy finally buys him room to use the book. Soldamer instantly polymorphs the crocodile into a sheep, but Sungjin has already opened the book and started the declamation. Sungjin finishes the passage with Zhang Fei's name, and the book answers him. The seance activates, boosting Sungjin's speed and strength as a guardian-like warrior spirit appears behind him, and he charges straight at Soldamer. Soldamer tries to polymorph him too, but the book offers one more skill, and Sungjin uses it without hesitation. Sungjin unleashes Shout of Changban, and the roar from him and the seance behind him shakes the oasis hard enough to break Soldamer's spellcasting. With Soldamer unable to cast, Sungjin cuts through the genie's fingers, leaps onto his arm, and rips into the smoke-bodied mage before he can recover. As the seance countdown ticks away, Soldamer suddenly collapses into smoke and gets sucked back into the lamp. Sungjin lands safely on the sand, and the cube confirms the hidden boss has been cleared. His relief lasts 1 second before the undead crocodile charges him again, and he has to awkwardly order his own minion to lie back down as a corpse. Finally alone again, Sungjin pours water over his head and admits Soldamer hit harder than anything he has faced so far. When Sungjin checks Shout of Changban, the cube reveals why the skill crushed Soldamer. Everyone inside 300 meters, even the caster, is locked out of casting for 10 seconds. The operator also confirms that Sungjin just lost more HP than ever before, which drives home how dangerous Soldamer really was. Once he catches his breath, Sungjin checks for any hidden elements left, hoping there might still be one more secret in the desert. The answer is no, but the raid suddenly hits 100% anyway, which should have meant the desert was finally over. Then the real problem drops. The rewards are frozen because someone in the party has become a troll. Staring out over the endless dunes, Sungjin realizes finding a hidden killer in this desert before time runs out may be impossible. At the same time, Igor reaches the oasis, sees the hidden boss battle from cover, and immediately realizes that secret 5% was the missing piece all along. Instead of joining in, Igor coldly maps out his options: run if the genie wins, run if Sungjin wins too easily, or strike if Sungjin survives by a narrow margin. He stays concealed through the whole fight and watches in shock as Sungjin uses the strange book to summon a guardian spirit and shut the genie's magic down. After Sungjin wins, Igor listens from hiding as the operator confirms Sungjin lost 4724 HP, and he seizes on that number as his opening. Igor convinces himself that Sungjin must be hurt badly enough to kill, and the troll announcement removes his last hesitation. The sound behind Sungjin is the attack itself. Igor hurls his round shield first and charges in with his sword, choosing murder over caution. Sungjin barely ducks as Igor's spinning bladed shield slices past his neck and the swordsman charges in right behind it. Igor times a pincer attack perfectly, but Sungjin still catches the sword with Moon Spectre and the returning shield with free arc in one brutal clash. When the shield snaps back into Igor's hand without any spell, Sungjin realizes Igor is fast, heavily geared, and far more dangerous than he first looked. Sungjin quietly sheathes Moon Spectre to set up Deathly Wail, then asks if Igor really chose to grow stronger by murdering his own teammates. Igor answers without shame that the raid is simple math: give up 10%, steal the other 90%, and monopolize every chapter by killing the party after the boss dies. Sungjin tells him that logic still has a ceiling, because Igor will never know what it means to earn a full 100% contribution honestly. He rushes in, slips past the incoming shield, and finally unleashes Deathly Wail at point-blank range. For 1 second Sungjin thinks the duel is over, until Igor shouts cleanse and a glowing necklace cancels Deathly Wail on the spot. With the shield already curving back for another crossfire, Sungjin breaks away and admits Igor is no easy target at all. Sungjin refuses to rely on Yanhuret yet, remembers one more option, and calls Manta out of the cube instead. Igor laughs at the sight of a swordsman taking a staff in his offhand and charges, sure he can stop any spell before it starts. Instead of casting, Sungjin starts a savage dual-wield rush, forcing Igor to split his defense between katana and staff at the same time. The combo keeps accelerating, and Igor is stunned that Sungjin can really use two completely different weapons like a master with both hands. Pressed into a corner, Igor hurls the shield from point-blank range and uses the opening to turn and run. Sungjin answers with magic, freezing Igor's feet in place with Binding Frost and Frostbite before he can get away. Even trapped, Igor gambles again by throwing his sword as bait, making Sungjin think he has finally run out of tricks. Then Sungjin spots the strange openings in Igor's gloves and realizes the returning weapons were never the shield's power at all. A heartbeat later the sword and shield whip back from behind, but Sungjin bats both away with Moon Spectre and Manta before they can hit him. Done giving Igor room to improvise, Sungjin rushes him again and hammers his guard until the sword flies from his hand. Igor reaches to call the sword back, and that tiny opening is all Sungjin needs to cut off the arm holding the shield. Igor barely reacts to losing one arm, which only makes him look even more monstrous to Sungjin. Sungjin follows with another paired strike, and this time Igor blocks the staff only to lose his last sword arm too. Facing a defeated enemy with both arms gone, Sungjin admits that if Igor had not become a troll, he would have made a terrifyingly good ally. Igor refuses to beg for mercy and simply asks Sungjin to kill him because the stronger hunter has won. Before the final blow falls, Igor asks for something stranger: survive to the end, break this prison, and save everyone trapped in the raids. Igor reveals he was Spetsnaz trained and murdered for points because he believed only the absolute strongest could free their loved ones from this hell. When Igor finishes by entrusting all of humanity's salvation to him, Sungjin hesitates only a moment before granting the death he asked for. Standing before Igor's corpse, Sungjin bitterly accepts those last wishes and feels the weight of a responsibility he never asked for. He wants to cry, but the desert wind and burning sun leave him dry-eyed as if even this place refuses him that much. The operator cuts through the mood with a cheerful system voice announcing that every troll in the party has been eliminated. In a burst of anger, Sungjin slashes the cube with Moon Spectre, but the blade leaves no mark at all. The cube ignores his rage and starts distributing the raid rewards, now all of them going to one survivor. Sungjin receives an enormous haul of points and coins for clearing the whole chapter alone, but after everything that happened it barely feels like a victory. Then the item rewards spill out, including the legendary lamp, a basilisk eye necklace, a magic carpet, potions, and new spell books. The first thing Sungjin grabs is the lamp, now transformed from a filthy relic into a spotless legendary treasure shining gold in his hands. While he inspects the lamp, the operator awards him the title Inquisition for surviving enemy spells in this raid. Another reward follows immediately. Adjudicator activates and Igor's trick item drops at Sungjin's feet as Telkrin, the jester's gloves. Reading the item text confirms Sungjin's guess that Igor's gloves, not the shield, were what let him throw and recall weapons. Since he has no gloves equipped, Sungjin puts them on immediately and likes the fit at once. He tests them with Moon Spectre, sending the katana flying away with Pa and calling it back cleanly with Ha. Satisfied, he decides this trick will open up a lot of new options once he gets real practice with it. Next he checks the legendary lamp properly and learns it summons Soldamer as a loyal familiar for 10 minutes at a time. When Sungjin rubs the lamp, blue smoke pours out and reshapes itself into a much smaller, very polite version of Soldamer. Soldamer apologizes for attacking earlier and formally accepts Sungjin as his new master after the trial. Asked what help he can offer, Soldamer proudly demonstrates that he can cast blue, red, and black spells up to the 7th circle, as long as his own mana lasts. Sungjin is immediately less impressed when the so-called greatest mage in Kyuten turns out to be heavily weakened by sealing himself in the lamp. Soldamer keeps rambling anyway, bragging that he once stood just below legendary mages and might have reached the perfect 10th circle if he had stayed free. Cutting the lecture short, Sungjin dismisses him, and the genie turns back into smoke and slips neatly into the lamp again. Sungjin moves on to the basilisk eye necklace and confirms it can paralyze a target for 3 seconds, just like the nightmare stare he already experienced. The last major reward is a rolled carpet, and when Sungjin opens it he finds a real flying carpet size for 2 people. He sits on it and activates flight, and the carpet obediently lifts him off the ground without costing any mana at all. After a brief confused pause about steering, he thinks about the palm tree and the carpet zips straight toward it on command. Realizing this reward can replace the flight spell he planned to buy, Sungjin keeps riding above the desert even while the operator starts the return countdown. When the countdown hits 0, Sungjin vanishes from the sky in mid-flight and leaves the desert behind. Elsewhere in the same desert chapter, Gerald Baltron stumbles through the sand alone, panting and checking over his shoulder to see if he finally lost the hunters chasing him. Baltron thinks back to how his raid collapsed after the basilisk kill, when one question about contribution points turned a successful team into a pack of trolls. Once everyone learned Baltron had the highest share for tanking the team, they turned on him too simply because he had the most to steal. He only escaped by using the club from his last raid to knock his attackers out long enough to run. As a cop with no law to protect him here, Baltron keeps scanning the dunes until the operator finally announces the return timer. Hearing that countdown, Baltron exhales in pure relief because for now at least, the nightmare of being hunted by people worse than monsters is finally ending. Sungjin reappears in the hunter's hall still gripping his sword, surrounded by endless pillars as more hunters teleport in drenched with sweat and desert sand. The operator appears above the hall and congratulates the survivors for clearing 5 chapters. But nobody looks relieved after barely making it out alive. When the operator reveals that only 637,024 hunters remain out of more than 7.3 billion, the scale of the slaughter hits the room all over again. The operator calls them the top 0.01% and tells them to keep growing, and Sungjin quietly wonders which familiar faces like Saran or Igor might still be alive by this point. The operator flashes images of loved ones and repeats the promise that everyone trapped in purgatory will be revived if the final raid is beaten, but the hunters answer with anger and disbelief. The room goes quiet the instant the operator announces a new area in the black market, because even angry hunters know her words can decide whether they live. As the operator recommends visiting the new zone and starts the countdown to the black market, other hunters speculate nervously while Sungjin already knows he can ignore the sales pitch. At 0, the hunters scatter into separate black market instances, and Sungjin heads out with one clear goal in mind. The moment he arrives in the black market, Sungjin checks his funds and heads straight for Kenneth's katana shop. Kenneth welcomes him back without complaint when Sungjin sheepishly asks to see Blood Vengeance for the 3rd time. With Moon Spectre in one hand and Blood Vengeance in the other, Sungjin tests both sheathed swords together and feels that his dual-wield style finally clicks. Kenneth admits he has never seen a customer handle 2 swords this well, which seals Sungjin's decision on the spot. Sungjin buys Blood Vengeance for 9,700 coins and walks out with the crimson blade hanging at his belt, finally a true dual swordsman. On his way back, Sungjin remembers the newly opened area and turns toward the market center to handle one more piece of business. At the center, Sungjin finds a brand new circular stall run by 3 pig demi-humans shouting for buyers and sellers. The operator explains that this is the Achi Brothers auction stall, where hunters can list items for other hunters to buy. Sungjin pulls out the heroic staff Manta and tells the pigs to put it up for auction. After hearing the heroic 2 rules, Sungjin confidently sets Manta at 3,000 coins with a 6,000 coin instant buyout based on what he knows items are really worth. The pig merchant locks Manta into the central display cube and promises that any earnings will be sent to 99 knights. Sungjin knows magic weapons do not move fast this early, but he leaves Manta there anyway because eventually someone will need it. He asks if any legendary items are on sale, hears there are none, and loses interest in shopping for anything else. With nothing else worth buying, Sungjin heads back to 99 Nights, already craving a cold meal after the desert. Back at the inn, Sungjin cools off with a bowl of icy noodles that finally washes the Kyutin desert out of his body. Across from him, the spirit in Sungjin's service says he finally looks better, and Sungjin is reminded that it survives by absorbing mana from the air instead of eating. Kane tears into chicken nearby, and Sungjin notices the puppy has grown again at an unnatural pace. After the meal, Sungjin thanks everyone and retreats to his room, drained enough that even a bath feels like survival work. Lying in the bath, Sungjin is hit by the full weight of what happened in the desert and by the operator's reminder that saving humanity may really rest on his shoulders. He admits to himself that he cannot clear every raid alone, because the system forces teamwork even while making trust painfully rare. Remembering Igor's logic about killing teammates for better rewards, Sungjin realizes the raid system itself may be rewarding evil over good. That thought pushes him to a bigger conclusion. If he wants to reach the final raid, he has to influence the whole game, not just keep powering himself up. Sungjin gets out with a plan, convinced there is one hidden place in the black market where he might be able to do exactly that. Right on cue, Dalyapin brings the next chapter's information sheet, and Sungjin asks him for an unusual wake-up call at 4:10 in the morning. Dalyapin agrees without protest, and Sungjin goes to bed early because the hidden market opens before dawn at 4:30. Before sunrise, Dalyapin's knock wakes Sungjin exactly on time, and he gets moving without wasting a minute. When he steps outside, Dalyapin quietly asks where he is going, and Sungjin answers in a way that makes it clear the innkeeper already knows more than he says. Outside the room, Kane tries to come along, and Sungjin gives in after a brief warning instead of leaving him behind. The black market is eerily silent in the dead of night, because almost every shop shuts down when its hunter is asleep. Sungjin searches the sleeping market for one hidden shop that is notoriously hard to find, checking the time when he still cannot see it. Sensing danger, Sungjin crouches and warns Kane to stay calm around whoever they are about to meet. Then the darkness itself thickens, and a shop hidden inside unnatural blackness finally appears. Kane suddenly breaks character and whines in fear, so Sungjin tells him to wait outside and goes in alone. Inside the darkness, Sungjin feels his way down a stairway into a basement bar lit by a single candle, with one lone figure waiting in the back corner. The operator identifies the place only as the hidden shop darker than black, and that bare explanation makes the room feel even more ominous to Sungjin. Sungjin sits across from the man in the corner, and the hidden shopkeeper greets him with a cryptic line about answers and questions before asking what he seeks. When Sungjin tries to see him, the shopkeeper casually creates a floating light orb and reveals that he is a human man, unlike the black market's usual demi-human vendors. To prove appearances mean nothing, the shopkeeper's face shifts through Igor, Saran, Hiro, and Baltran right in front of Sungjin. The shopkeeper returns to his own face and calmly says he can answer anything or provide anything, as long as Sungjin can pay the proper price. After a brief hesitation, Sungjin asks the real reason he came, whether there is an item that lets him move between raids. Later at 99 Nights with coffee on the table, Sungjin studies the green polymorph spellbook while Soldimer talks him through why the spell is useful against multiple enemies. Sungjin memorizes polymorph, and the green book burns away in green light as the spell is added to him for good. He moves on to the blue chain lightning spellbook, and Soldimer proudly calls it his signature spell before warning that stray lightning can undo polymorph by hitting the wrong target. Sungjin accepts the tip and memorizes chain lightning too, burning the second book away in blue light. With the new magic learned, Sungjin calls the operator and pours his remaining points into strength, dexterity, endurance, magic power, and especially mind power. Looking over his boosted stats, Sungjin decides raw power is no longer his problem and starts weighing a riskier title instead. Since every chapter has already become a treasure hunt for him anyway, Sungjin switches his title from Master Hunter to Treasure Hunter for the next raid. With coffee and a sandwich in hand, Sungjin settles in to study the next raid briefing for Count Dimitri's castle ruins. The operator says there are still more than 36 minutes left, so Sungjin slows down and studies the details much more carefully than usual. One warning stands out: Count Dimitri heals and powers up by drinking blood, which means protecting allies will decide the fight. That line makes Sungjin uneasy, because protecting people is exactly the kind of role he does not trust himself to play well. Even so, he keeps reading until the teleport finally takes him away to Count Dimitri's castle ruins and the next raid begins. Sungjin is summoned into a rattling horse carriage rolling toward Count Dimitri's castle ruins under a low moon, and the place already feels wrong. The operator warns that this ancient castle is still inhabited, and the carriage stops right at its huge entrance. The headless carriage driver greets him in a creepy formal tone, and Sungjin steps out already tense because this place still unnerves him. As the hunters synchronize in, Sungjin yawns from the early hour and casually checks the new team's titles out of habit. Then Sungjin freezes when he spots the blue-eyed tattooed monk Mahadas, a survivor he fought beside in his previous life. Sungjin blurts out Mahadas' name and grabs his hands like an old friend, even though this is their first meeting in this life. Mahada's politely asks if they have met, and Sungjin is hit with memories of the fighter's past and the tragedy that turned him into a monk. Mahada's gently shuts down the topic and asks Sungjin to forget his old fame, clearly uncomfortable being recognized. Giovanni recognizes Mahada's too, but Dominic and Ping Long cut in and steer the group back to introductions and raid prep before things get awkward. Sungjin lets go and reins himself in, realizing he cannot treat Mahada's like an old comrade yet. The raid objective appears: kill the 1,000-year vampire Count Dimitri within 90 minutes. With only minutes left, Dominic naturally takes charge and starts formal introductions so the team can lock down roles fast. Dominic introduces himself as an English spear user with some fire magic, setting the tone for a balanced team. Giovanni follows with a slightly suspicious answer about being from Mexico, and Sungjin quietly files away that odd pause. Peng Long says he is Chinese, mainly uses a bow, and is also experimenting with magic from the back line. Mahada's introduces himself as a Canadian monk who fights with martial arts, keeping his past fame buried as much as possible. Because Peng Long is actually Chinese, Sungjin drops the fake identity this time and simply says he is Korean. Dominic brings the talk back to the real danger. If Count Dimitri bites someone, the vampire can fully heal and become far stronger. Sungjin already knows this raid cannot be soloed cleanly before the boss dies, so for now he has to move with the team. As the team settles into formation, Sungjin sees no obvious weak link yet, and Mahada's presence lets him relax a little before the raid starts. While they talk, Sungjin is already thinking bigger than this one chapter. Buy another black market item, start interfering in other raids, and shape the survivor pool himself. After the Igor incident, Sungjin decides he will personally protect the decent hunters, kill the bad ones, and build a final 10 who can actually trust each other. Dominic snaps him out of it by asking for his opinion, and suddenly Sungjin realizes everyone has noticed he was somewhere else entirely. Giovanni calls him irresponsible for zoning out during a life-or-death discussion, and Sungjin answers with a blunt claim: this raid does not need much strategy from any of them. When they demand an explanation, Sungjin just tells them to follow him and see for themselves. Then Sungjin places one hand on Moon Spectre and the other on Blood Vengeance, making the team realize he is about to fight with two swords. Peng Long and Mahada's both react to the impossible dual-wielding stance, and Sungjin answers by drawing both legendary blades in a dazzling moonlit display. The countdown hits 0 while the others are still staring, and the raid begins with Sungjin already owning the room. Sungjin simply says let's go and takes point, forcing the original formation to fall in behind him instead. Past the Iron Gate, the castle garden is a dead place of cracked pots, broken glass, twisted trees, and long-rotted flowers. Two grotesque zombie Dobermans stalk out barking, their flesh rotted away until teeth and eyeballs are exposed. The dogs keep their distance and threaten him, but Sungjin walks straight at them like they are already dead. The instant they lunge, Sungjin's twin blades flash once and cut both zombie dogs clean in half. He keeps walking as if nothing happened, and only when he notices the others frozen in shock does he call them forward. At the main door, Sungjin immediately points out the 5 stones from the info sheet and orders everyone onto them. When all 5 stand on the stones, a distant bell rings and a voice welcomes them from above. A swarm of bats gathers on the tower and forms the pale noble figure of Count Dimitri, who greets them like honored guests in his own nightmare house. When Dimitri announces floor-by-floor games, Sungjin instantly spots a loophole and quietly asks the operator for Alzard. The magic carpet appears from the cube, and while Dimitri keeps talking, Sungjin is already planning to skip the whole castle and kill the boss on the spot. The moment the Count finishes speaking, Sungjin launches Alzard toward the tower to blitz him before the scripted dungeon can even start. But Peng Long fires first, and that early arrow gives Dimitri the split second he needs to break apart into bats and escape. Cursing the mischance, Sungjin chases the bat swarm through the night, while Dimitri taunts him to clear the castle properly and come to the top floor. Sungjin answers with chain lightning, firing the spell from Moon Spectre, but Dimitri sheds part of the swarm to absorb the hit and keeps fleeing. He tries to follow with a fire spell, but the remaining bats dive into a tiny sewer by the moat before he can finish them off. The fireball explodes too late, wrecking the entrance but not the boss, and Sungjin can only stare at the tiny tunnel in frustration. He returns empty-handed, and when Giovanni asks if he got him, Sungjin dryly points out the operator would have announced it. Sungjin knows Peng Long only fired to help, so he swallows the irritation and leads everyone inside the castle instead. The interior starts pitch black, and Dominic reaches for an old lantern, not realizing Sungjin already knows what comes next. Before the lantern matters, eerie orchestra music starts and the entire first-floor corridor lights up under grand chandeliers. Masked couples in formal clothes appear laughing and dancing through the hall, turning the corridor into a fake ballroom. The scene is bizarre enough to rattle the team, but Sungjin warns them not to get distracted and to stay sharp. Then the piano slams, the music twists into something ugly, and Sungjin calmly tells them the real fight starts now. The dancers rip off their masks to reveal white faces and fangs, and the beautiful ballroom instantly becomes a vampire ambush. The normal tactic is to lure them one at a time, but Sungjin ignores that completely and charges alone into the narrow corridor. Against ordinary hunters, these vampires are brutally fast, but against Sungjin they are just bodies flying apart under twin legendary swords. A few stragglers break toward the other four, finally forcing the rest of the party to prepare for real combat. Mahadas reaches them first and shatters a female vampire's jaw with a single kick. He pivots to the male vampire, activates overheat, and drives a glowing gauntlet punch through its stomach. That brutal 1-2 tells the whole team what kind of monster Mahadas really is, and even the others momentarily lower their guard in shock. Once Mahadas starts moving in earnest, he tears into the corridor vampires with the same overwhelming force Sungjin is showing up front. Seeing both frontliners tear through the raid, the other three realize this chapter might actually be clearable by just those two. Even so, Punlong starts firing into the distance, and Giovanni and Dominic jump back in because nobody wants to be carried if contribution points are on the line. As he fights, Dominic can't shake how strange this chapter feels when the real struggle is not survival but trying to earn points before Sungjin and Mahadas kill everything first. Dominic finally stabs down a jaw-broken vampire and gets his own kill, but the raid still feels unreal enough that he starts wondering if the monsters are weak, not his teammates absurdly strong. In the castle hallway, Dominic spots another lone vampire and charges ahead by himself, too desperate for contribution points to listen when someone warns him to stop. He confidently unleashes Endless Needle, and his spear splits into a storm of copies that punch through a vampire's neck. With 2 kills under his belt, Dominic gets cocky again when he notices a female vampire alone in the distance. He fires a fire bolt at her feet to force her into the air, planning to skewer her when she drops back down. But the vampire he thought was finished is still alive, and its claws suddenly stab into Dominic's ankle from below. That one mistake costs him everything, because the female vampire drops on him faster than expected and slips past his spear while his trapped leg keeps him pinned. She rips open his back and bites into his neck, and Dominic starts fading out as blood pours from both wounds. Just before he blacks out, a flying sword suddenly punches through the vampire's head. The flying sword whips back across him and cleanly decapitates the vampire feeding on his neck, finally freeing Dominic from its fangs. Mahadas arrives a beat later, kicks away the last vampire holding Dominic down, and catches Dominic before he collapses. More vampires rush in to finish them, but Giovanni plants himself in the gap and holds the line with shield and axe. Punlong pins one vampire with an arrow, and the team uses that opening to push the swarm back. Then Sungjin flashes through the survivors and ends the fight so fast the hallway goes quiet almost at once. Giovanni is ready to chew Dominic out for running off, but the lecture dies when he sees how deathly pale Dominic has become. Once Sungjin gets back, he checks Dominic's condition and realizes he only survived because Telkran's flying sword reached him a heartbeat in time. Mahadas uses white healing magic to close the visible wounds, but Sungjin stays tense because a vampire bite can leave more than blood loss behind. Dominic says he feels fine and weird at the same time, and that dizzy answer confirms Sungjin's suspicion. Sungjin asks the operator how long blood curse lasts, and the answer comes back cold and exact, 30 minutes. Punlong has never even heard of blood curse, which tells Sungjin the raid sheet hit another critical rule again. Mahadas asks for the full effect, and the operator reveals the real horror. The curse cuts all stats by 30%, then kills the victim and turns him into a vampire when the timer ends. Giovanni asks if there is any cure, but between Punlong's items and Sungjin's own knowledge, nobody has a way to remove a curse on hand. The moment Sungjin asks whether anyone has removed curse, the silence says enough, and Dominic's face falls into open despair. After a quick calculation, Sungjin offers the only path left: clear the entire raid before the 30 minutes run out so the black market reset can erase the curse with everything else. That hope nearly dies when the operator says there is still more than an hour left on the raid clock. Sungjin keeps one key detail to himself, then simply tells them to trust him because he is going to force this raid to end early. He assigns Giovanni to guard Dominic at all costs, even with Dominic's stats cut down by the curse. Then Sungjin pulls Punlong and Mahadas into his strike team and tells them to hunt beside him as fast as they possibly can. The 5 hunters step onto the circular lift slots, and the old elevator grinds upward toward the next floor. On the way up, Sungjin races through the problem in his head. He has to find the hidden boss and secret spot inside Dominic's shrinking time limit. He steadies himself with 2 advantages. The enemies are packed floor by floor this time, and he brought Treasure Hunter specifically to sniff out the hidden elements faster. But when Sungjin looks at Dominic's corpse-pale face, he grimly admits to himself that if 30 minutes still is not enough, he may have to kill Dominic with his own hands before the curse turns him. To cut the clear time even further, Sungjin decides to spend his summons now and pulls out Kane's figurine and Soldemer's golden lamp. Kane and Soldemer answer him at once, turning the cramped elevator into an even stranger war room. The elevator opens onto the second-floor spider room, a nightmare tangle of giant webs that would normally waste precious time. Sungjin skips the careful approach and orders Soldemer to burn the whole floor at once. Soldemer drops Inferno into the room, and fire races through the webs so fast the whole floor turns into a screaming furnace. While the others hesitate at the sight, Sungjin and Kane charge straight into the blaze to finish whatever survives. By the time Punlong looks back, the room is already a butchered pile of burned, sliced, crushed, and bitten spider corpses. Giovanni snaps Punlong out of it, and everyone piles back onto the elevator with the genie and wolf as the desperate climb continues. During the ride, Punlong catches how obedient Kane is under Sungjin's voice and grudgingly notices the bond despite his own old fear of wolves. Then Dominic quietly asks Punlong if he can fire one shot into many, already planning the next floor before the doors even open. Punlong shows off his bow's split arrow skill, and Dominic immediately turns that answer into a room-clearing plan. Without wasting breath, Dominic tells Punlong to tag as many suits of armor as possible, and cues the genie to get chain lightning ready. The third floor opens in eerie silence, revealing nothing but a long corridor lined with neat rows of empty armored mannequins. When Giovanni wonders where the enemies are, Dominic calmly tells Punlong to start shooting anyway. Punlong uses split arrow on the chandelier so the magical arrows scatter across the room and tag almost every suit of armor at once. That hit wakes the trap, and the armored mannequins all come alive together with weapons drawn. Dominic holds the team in place until the packed formation is perfect, waiting for the line to bunch up into one chain lightning kill box. Then Dominic casts chain lightning in sync with the genie, and the current rips from suit to suit until the whole marching line collapses. Only a few damaged stragglers are left standing, and this time even Giovanni and Dominic can smash through them instantly. The third floor is cleared in a blink, and everyone jumps straight back onto the elevator before the momentum can die. As the lift climbs again, Sungjin remembers the fourth floor monster as a giant damaged sponge that used to eat 10 whole minutes by itself. Dominic's pain groan kills any thought of testing limits, and Sungjin immediately shifts into all-out burst mode for the next fight. Sungjin orders the genie to open with a defense-breaking debuff, then tells Mahadas and Punlong to hit the next enemy with everything they have. The fourth floor opens into a strange laboratory where a giant stitched monster stands dormant inside a humming machine. The machine jolts the giant awake with chemicals and lightning, and Sungjin charges before it can even fully get moving. The genie lands weakness on the monster. Punlong buries an arrow in its head, and Sungjin and Mahadas crash in behind the setup. Sungjin drives both swords deep into its chest while Mahadas hammers its chin, and the so-called time wall goes down in about a minute. Back on the elevator, Sungjin looks at the giant's shredded remains and realizes his current damage is on an entirely different level from the last timeline. That brutal speed leaves Giovanni and Punlong looking grim, because now they can plainly see how completely Sungjin has been swallowing the contribution points. Sungjin understands exactly why Dominic ran ahead earlier, because every point he takes now is growth his teammates will not have later. Instead of pretending the system is fair, he finally decides this will be the last raid where he monopolizes everything. His new plan is simple. Buy the item he needs from Darker Than Black, then start traveling between raids so he can hunt separately, and stop starving his teammates for points. The elevator reaches the fifth and final floor, and the doors open on a well-dressed Count Dimitri already waiting for them. Then the raid itself confirms the showdown as a warning window names him out loud, Boss Monster 1000-Year Count Dimitri. At the top floor, Count Dimitri welcomes the party in a fancy suit and his usual smug manners, but Sungjin has no patience left for talk. Sungjin instantly uses Telkran and hurls blood vengeance straight at the boss. Before the blade can hit, Dimitri explodes into a cloud of bats and dodges with a mocking laugh. Sungjin recalls the sword, and Dimitri reforms near the podium, still acting amused as he finally draws his rapier himself. Knowing one successful bite could fully heal the vampire, Sungjin rushes him before Dimitri can touch any teammate. Dimitri tries to meet him with finesse, but Sungjin batters the rapier out of his hand in just 2 heavy strikes. Sungjin follows with a killing slash, but the hit feels wrong as Dimitri slips away in bat form again. Dimitri chants illusion, the bat swarm multiplies, and 4 identical counts land at the corners of the room. The team wavers, so Sungjin immediately pulls back to protect them and shifts the fight into a coordinated test. He warns the damage dealers that avoiding a bite matters more than attacking, and tells Giovanni to stay close and guard the group. Sungjin asks Soldimer for a way to spot the real Count, but the unseen lamp spirit can only suggest burning the copies and apologizes for lacking white magic. Since there is no clean trick, Sungjin assigns 1 target to each side and prepares to test all 4 at once. On Sungjin's countdown, everyone moves at once and he charges with Manyata in hand to ring out the signal. Sungjin cuts his target in half, and it vanishes on the spot, proving he hit another fake. A beat later, the real Count reveals himself over the group and launches Wind Cutter down at them. Giovanni throws up his shield and shouts for everyone to get behind him, but he cannot cover them fast enough. Some blades stop on the shield, but others slash through Punlong's armor and wound him anyway. Sungjin rushes the last Count again, but Dimitri simply rises, casts illusion once more, and resets the whole miserable pattern. As the copies reform, both summons announce that their 10 minutes are up, and Sungjin suddenly loses 2 key tools while the fight is still unresolved. Even with Dominic's life ticking away, Sungjin forces himself not to gamble the team and decides he will handle all 4 alone if he has to. Right before he moves, Sungjin notices drops of blood on the floor and remembers his first sword strike must have clipped the real body. He sees that every copy has the same cut on the left arm, but only one is still actively dripping blood, which gives the real Count away. Sungjin quietly tips Punlong off with just 1 word, and Ping understands immediately. Sungjin charges the bleeding copy, and this time Dmitri is visibly rattled that his trick has been read. Dmitri panics and casts slow, shaving just enough speed off Sungjin to retreat upward as bats again. Even after the bat split, the real swarm is still bleeding, so Sungjin calls Penglong in for the finish. Penglong fires split arrows into the right swarm, and the magical volley tears through the entire cluster at once. Sungjin runs through the falling bats, she's Moon Spectre in one clean motion, and unleashes Deathly Wail the instant Dimitri's body reforms. The others stagger in fear for a moment from the aftermath, but the operator announces the boss clear and the castle finally falls silent. Giovanni spots Sungjin calmly shaking blood from his blades beside Count Dimitri's beheaded corpse and finally exhales in relief. But Sungjin does not stop to celebrate, and says they need to keep moving because only a little of Dominic's time should be left. When Giovanni asks where they are even going, Sungjin uses Treasure Hunter and asks the operator for a hidden place or secret boss hint. The operator answers with a riddle about a wandering merchant who climbed the mountain, got trapped in the castle, and ended up turned into a cocoon. Sungjin pieces it together on the spot, realizes the clue points to the spiders, and heads for the elevator at once. The party packs into the clanking elevator, and Mahadas finally asks what exactly Sungjin is trying to do. Sungjin explains that this is a side quest for treasure, and Penglong perks up immediately at the word treasure. Sungjin adds that the person they are about to meet will cut them a very favorable deal, which immediately catches the low-contribution hunters off guard. When Dominic asks what that means for his curse, Sungjin says it may get solved more easily than expected, without explaining yet. The elevator stops on the 4th floor, and Sungjin hurries everyone across Frankenstein's room toward the route down to the spider floor. Still fielding questions, Sungjin finally tells them outright that they are going back to the spider room because the clue said cocoon. On the 2nd floor, the party enters the burned spider chamber, and Sungjin orders everyone to search carefully for a hidden cocoon. Sungjin probes through the charred webbing with both swords and worries for a moment that Soldemer's inferno might have already burned the hidden merchant alive. Then Giovanni finds a narrow waterway and barred drain opening, and Sungjin instantly recognizes the hidden path. Sungjin cuts the metal bars apart and leads the team into the sewer beyond the spider room. Inside, the passage is bigger than expected and choked with sticky webbing, which only convinces Sungjin more that they found the right place. Deep inside the tunnel, they finally uncover a giant cocoon about the size of a person. Sungjin cuts the cocoon open and reveals an unconscious ratman inside, exactly who he hoped to find. The operator confirms this is the hidden merchant Rough Han, and the others are left staring at the ratman in disbelief. Sungjin slaps Rough Han awake and bluntly reminds him this is the second time he has been saved, so he had better hand over the good stuff. Once he understands the spiders are gone, Rough Han accepts the debt and turns to a smaller cocoon hidden behind him. He tears open the smaller cocoon, pulls out his special merchant cube, and offers each hunter one heavily discounted item. Rough Han starts laying out gear after gear, and the whole group leans in as the sewer turns into an impromptu secret shop. Penglong is the first to strike a deal when he spots heroic shooting gloves that perfectly fit an archer. He buys them immediately for a fraction of the black market price and equips them on the spot with a satisfied grin. Sungjin stays out of the shopping because he is saving every coin for a far more important item waiting in darker than black. Dominic also hangs back, too anxious about his curse and too broke to shop comfortably while his life is still on the line. Sungjin cuts to the real problem and asks Rough Han if he has anything that can remove a curse. Rough Han digs through his stock and produces Innocence, a white diamond necklace with Purify that can cleanse curses and other status effects. The price is steep but still an incredible discount, so Sungjin expects Dominic to grab it without a second thought. Dominic admits he cannot afford it because he spent almost everything on his spear and only has 1,800 coins left. Sungjin thinks through it fast, but he cannot spend his own coins here either without risking the bigger purchase he came for. Before the moment can sink into despair, Mahadas calmly steps in and offers to buy the necklace himself. He first confirms Purify can be used on someone else, then buys Innocence without hesitation. The moment he equips it, Mahadas places a glowing hand on Dominic's forehead and uses Purify. The curse lifts, color returns to Dominic's face, and the whole scene looks almost sacred for a beat. Sungjin is struck less by the miracle than by Mahadas himself, noting how quickly the monk sacrifices his own gain to save someone else. Dominic drops to his knees and bows deeply, swearing he will repay both Mahadas and Sungjin for saving his life. Sungjin brushes the thanks off, but Mahadas answers with quiet generosity and asks Dominic to repay the debt by helping others instead. With Dominic no longer dying on a timer, the mood loosens and the hidden shop session continues. Giovanni debates between heavy offense and mobility, then lets Rough Han talk him into rocket-powered steel greaves for rescue and repositioning. Dominic spends his exact remaining coins on a cheaper protective ring, settling for something weaker than Innocence but still useful. In the end, Sungjin is the only one who buys nothing, still guarding his savings for the real prize ahead. Before packing up, Rough Han grudgingly admits he still owes Sungjin and offers him a mystery pouch instead of a normal sale item. He warns that the value has dropped since someone already cleared ancient stories from the east, then closes his stock and prepares to vanish again. Then Rough Han drops to all fours and disappears back into the sewer, leaving the team with new gear, a rescued Dominic, and Sungjin's strange new pouch. Back in the room above the sewer, the hunters finally catch their breath and admit the raid feels almost finished after Rough Han's chaos. Dominic awkwardly apologizes for his reckless mistake, and the others wave it off now that everyone survived. Sungjin climbs up from the sewer last, sees the warm little teen moment, and immediately reminds himself the real raid still has one hidden threat left. Before speaking, Sungjin stores the mystery pouch in the cube, then cuts into the rest with a warning that the raid still has a hidden boss left. He explains that hidden bosses are tougher than normal bosses, but killing one means bonus points, coins, and better contribution for everyone. Sungjin makes the danger plain too. He can handle the hidden boss himself, but it is deadly enough that he cannot promise anyone else's safety. Mahada steps up first, saying he wants to face every challenge until these raids reveal whatever truth lies behind them. Pumlong joins in too, deciding that staying back and shooting from a safe distance is worth the gamble. Sungjin gives Giovanni and Dominic an easy out, but Dominic refuses to stay behind after being saved and insists on helping. Not wanting to be the only one left behind, Giovanni reluctantly agrees to come search too, even if he is not thrilled about a second boss fight. With all 5 hunters finally moving as one group, Sungjin asks the operator to spend Treasure Hunter's active clue on the hidden boss. The clue paints a grim picture of a loyal knight who was betrayed, beheaded, and still circles the castle searching for his missing head. The group throws out guesses about the clue, and Sungjin lands on the simplest lead: search around the outside of the castle first. They ride the elevator down and pass through Dimitri's dead castle, where the ballroom vampires are now nothing but ash on the floor. The moment they step past the dead zombie dogs outside, the clue clicks all at once: the headless coachman. They approach the same horse-drawn carriage from the raid's start, and find the coachman still sitting there, reins in hand, with no head on his shoulders. Sungjin draws his swords and tests the idea, but the operator stops him with a penalty warning because the coachman is not hostile yet. Then the ghost finally speaks, asking only one thing first: did the hunters kill Count Dimitri? When Sungjin says he beheaded Dimitri, the ghost laughs bitterly and reveals he suffered the same betrayal and death. Instead of attacking, the coachman begs Sungjin to find his missing head so he can return to battle. Back with the party, Sungjin asks if anyone saw a severed head in the castle, and Giovanni suddenly remembers the armor room full of hidden helmets. The hunters trudge back inside and up to the 3rd floor, even though most of them are clearly tired of searching this cursed castle again. They split up and search every fallen helm, but every last one comes up empty. Sungjin stops and mentally retraces every floor, searching for anything in the castle that already involved a stitched-on head. Then it clicks for Sungjin. The 4th floor Frankenstein's monster was stitched together from different corpses, so its head could be the one Bisgoro wants. He rushes the team to the 4th floor, pulls down the monster's shirt, and confirms the neck was stitched on from a different corpse. Without wasting another second, Sungjin cuts the stitched head free in one clean swing. Sungjin carries the gruesome prize back toward the elevator, pleased with himself, while the others stare like they have just realized he is much weirder than they thought. At the castle gate again, Sungjin warns everyone to be ready because this is where the hidden boss should finally trigger. The coachman immediately recognizes the severed head and desperately demands that Sungjin hand it over. The instant Sungjin hands it over, Bisgoro clutches the head instead of reattaching it, and wild green ghost light starts pouring from it as it laughs. Bisgoro roars for battle, draws a hidden longsword, and smashes the carriage apart in one blow as the hidden boss finally reveals himself. Sungjin reaches for Romance of the 3 Kingdoms right away, determined to end this fast before the hidden boss can take control of the fight. He starts the declamation, but Bisgoro instantly shouts for his horse Shadowrun and bolts away so fast the recitation is broken before it can finish. Sungjin kicks on Swift Paw and sprints after him, but even at insane speed he cannot close the gap. When running fails, Sungjin summons the magic carpet and rises into the air to figure out what the boss is actually doing. From above, he realizes the clue was literal. Bisgoro is circling the entire castle at full speed and will loop back to the gate. Sungjin drops back to the others and warns them the boss is coming around again, just as the mounted knight reappears from the far side. Sungjin tries to open the book again, only to find declamation still on cooldown for a few more seconds while Bisgoro closes the distance. Bisgoro uses that tiny opening to call soldiers to him, and dozens of ghost cavalrymen materialize behind his charge. Sungjin immediately pulls everyone back inside the gate, knowing a direct collision with a cavalry charge would be suicide. The ghost riders flood through the entrance, and the whole party braces to meet them head-on. Each hunter holds their lane, and Sungjin proves again how absurdly fast he is by cutting down a rider and its horse in a single stroke. But Bisgoro himself stays outside the walls, still circling, so Sungjin takes to the sky again to confirm the pattern before committing his trump card. Once the timing finally lines up, Sungjin opens Romance of the 3 Kingdoms again and starts a new passage even with the cavalry nearly on top of him. He trusts the book all the way to the end, finishing the declamation at the last possible second instead of dodging. The seance this time is Pang Tong, turning Sungjin into a battle strategist with rapid casting, extra mana, and an instant spell called Link Trap. Sungjin casts Link Trap immediately, and ghostly chains spread across the charge to drag the cavalry from runaway speed to a miserable crawl. Then he rises on the magic carpet and unleashes a rapid volley of fireballs before the trapped army can recover. The chained cavalry is burned to ash in a wave of explosions, leaving only Biscoro standing after the flames clear. With the seance countdown already ticking, Sungjin drops from the carpet, switches back to swords, and goes straight for the hidden boss before the buff ends. Biscoro rages over his destroyed cavalry and swings back, but Link Trap has dulled him enough that Sungjin slips past the attack cleanly. Sungjin punishes the opening instantly, slicing off the arm holding the head and beheading Shadowrun to erase the horse from the fight. Dismounted and maimed, Biscoro desperately tries one last spell to raise his fallen soldiers back as undead servants. Sungjin cuts the spell off with Telkrin's glove commands, sending both swords flying out and back to carve Biscoro apart before the incantation can finish. The hidden boss is cleared, and Sungjin notices there is no blood on his blades at all because Biscoro was only a ghost in the end. When he turns back, the other hunters are just staring at him, because the Pang Tong seance and that whole finish made it obvious he is the master hunter. Sungjin does not really deny it either, only shrugging that he was never exactly trying to hide the truth. The operator interrupts the awkward silence by announcing that every enemy in the raid has been slain and reward distribution is starting. Dominic Scher comes first, and even though his contribution is low, he looks relieved just to be alive after nearly dying early in the raid. The rest of the team receives modest contribution results too, which quietly confirms just how much of this raid Sungjin carried himself. When Sungjin's reward appears, his contribution dwarfs everyone else's, and the extra coin gain finally leaves him with enough money for the item waiting at Darker Than Black. Just as Sungjin finishes that calculation, the operator moves the raid forward again with the next step, item distribution. Back at the raid rewards, Dominic goes first and immediately throws on a rare-looking spider silk mantle, clearly pleased with what he got. Giovanni's reward is a vampire slayer's axe, but one look is enough for him to grumble that it is weaker than his current weapon and only good for selling. Peng Long receives Frankenstein's Monsters Ringer's Solution, a heroic belt that auto-injects healing when its wearer is near death, and he instantly decides it is tank gear he would rather sell. The second Peng Long says he will auction the belt. Giovanni rushes over and starts bargaining hard for it on the spot. Mahadas gets Frankenstein's Monster's Hard Flesh, a regenerating shoulder item, and equips it without hesitation as the living green skin crawls under his clothes. Sungjin's turn hits bigger. He receives a vampire ring, a ghost stallion summon, an illusion spell book, extra potions, and a legendary item called Biscoro Delahan's Head. Then the title rewards arrive, and Sungjin gets Summoner, which simply extends how long his spiritual link summons can stay active. Sungjin decides the title is not amazing right now, but with more summons later it could matter, so he accepts it as useful future growth. When Sungjin opens the legendary item's details, the stats are excellent, but he freezes at the ugly truth that the flaming skull is somehow classified as a helm. He equips it anyway, and the skull expands and clamps over his head like armor, instantly turning the darkness around him bright and readable. Sungjin tests the helm's look on Dominic, and Dominic jerks back before admitting it is not weird so much as seriously intimidating. The helm's nuisance shows up fast when a voice starts talking directly into Sungjin's head, introducing itself as Sir Biscoro and demanding proper respect. Mahadas notices Sungjin talking to the air and asks if the spirit is still haunting him, confirming nobody else can hear the chatty dead knight. Once Biscoro starts ranting about Count Dmitri, Sungjin tells him the Count is already dead and he personally cut off his head. That pushes out Biscoro's backstory. He insists Dmitri falsely executed him for treason when he tried to marry the Count's daughter. The story gets ugly when Biscoro proudly reveals he had served 40 years, was 52 at the time, and wanted to marry a 20-year-old girl. Sungjin instantly calls it criminal, while Biscoro somehow argues that decades of service should have earned him the daughter anyway. The others just stare at Sungjin like he is the one with the problem, and he decides this conversation has gone on long enough. Sungjin orders Biscoro to drop his grudge and move on, and the old knight finally agrees to stay quiet unless he is called for battle. With the chatter silenced for now, Sungjin checks the blood-red vampire ring and realizes its simple 2% lifesteal effect is absurdly strong in his hands. Then he inspects the horse-marked coin and finds another summon waiting inside, Shadowrun, Biscoro's ghost stallion. Sungjin flips the coin, and a ghost stallion bursts into existence beside him with a loud whinny while Biscoro immediately brags through the skull helm about his favorite warhorse. He climbs onto the ghost stallion and likes the mount immediately, but the operator cuts in with a 1-minute return countdown before he can really test it. Knowing time is almost up, Sungjin dismounts and decides to spend the last moments saying goodbye to the hunters who survived with him. He starts with Dominic, sincerely telling him he is glad they managed to save his life, and Dominic promises he will return the favor if they meet again. Giovanni and Peng Long are still locked in a prize fight over the heroic belt, barely noticing Sungjin as the countdown keeps shrinking. Sungjin gives Mahadas a much calmer farewell, and the monk warmly credits him as the true benefactor of the raid before sending him off with a prayerful blessing. As the final countdown hits, Peng Long and Giovanni finally seal their trade, then both turn and call their thanks to Kay before the teleport takes everyone away. A flash later, Sungjin is back in the black market and immediately checks his money, confirming he has 10,900 black coins to work with. That total leaves him only 900 coins beyond the 10,000 he needs for Darker Than Black, so regular shopping feels pointless. Instead, he asks for the unopened mystery pouch, remembering it can spit out a legendary crafting material but also ruin its own value if the wrong book piece comes out. Because his own romance of the Three Kingdoms is already complete, Sungjin knows another East book part would crash to a pathetic refund value and become almost useless to him. After thinking through the odds, he decides not to gamble on opening it at all and chooses to sell the pouch so another hunter can use it instead. He heads to the Three Achi Brothers auction house and first checks on Manta, only to hear from the staff that nobody bid on it and the item was withdrawn. Sungjin expected that result, tells the staff to keep Manta available, and moves straight to the real business, putting the mystery pouch up for auction. He sets the mystery pouch at a 3,000 starting price and 4,000 buyout, balancing its huge upside against the risk that it could disappoint the buyer. With that done, he returns to 99 Nights, where Kane is already bristling at the stable because Shadowrun now occupies the place that used to sit empty. Sungjin gently tries to calm Kane and greets Shadowrun properly, but Kane stays suspicious of the ghost mount and clearly does not want to be friends. Giving up on forced friendship for the moment, Sungjin heads inside for dinner instead. Inside the inn, Dalyupin welcomes him back and Soldemer greets him with elder-like warmth, which Sungjin respectfully returns before asking for food. After a huge rich meal, Sungjin collapses onto his bed too full to move and plans to sleep early so he can wake before dawn again. As he idly wonders whether the mystery pouch sold, Dalyupin knocks and arrives with the next raid information sheet plus a separate auction receipt. The receipt says the mystery pouch sold for 3,400 black coins to someone named Headhunter, and that name hits Sungjin immediately. He asks Dalyupin to wake him again at 3:30, but once the innkeeper leaves, Sungjin keeps staring at the receipt and quietly suspects Headhunter might be Saran Han. He forces himself not to get attached, reminding himself that random hunters almost never meet again and that hope usually just turns into pain. Still, he cashes in the receipt and steps out onto the balcony, where the distant black market lights only make the separation between hunters feel heavier. He reflects that hunters can only truly meet inside raids, turning every quiet night outside combat into its own battle against loneliness. Then the operator interrupts the silence with huge news. Headhunter has completed the unique legendary item 1001 Nights, locking out every other copy. Sungjin freezes because that item can only mean the Middle Eastern Ancient Stories book, making Saran feel suddenly much less like a lost chance encounter. With the full moon behind him, Sungjin quietly revises his odds and admits to himself that he may meet Saran again after all. Before dawn the next day, Sungjin heads back out from the inn for Darker Than Black, and Kane stubbornly follows until Sungjin gives up and lets him come part of the way. At the hidden corner, Kane finally stops on his own, too uneasy to go any closer to the place where the merchant waits. Sungjin enters the darkness alone, and thanks to Biscoro's ghost vision he can now see cleanly down the hidden stairs into the secret bar below. Inside, the hidden merchant greets him like an expected customer, and Sungjin gets straight to the point about buying the item they discussed. The merchant produces the Troll Seeker marble for 10,000 coins, and Sungjin pays without hesitation. The merchant reminds him the marble can force entry into raids where a troll appears, but every use costs another 1,000 coins to recharge. Sungjin says that fee will not be a problem because he plans to make more than that each jump by hunting trolls, taking their rewards, and selling what he gets. But even with the marble in hand, one problem keeps nagging him. Troll hunting means keeping Adjudicator active instead of using his better growth titles. The merchant reads that hesitation instantly, and asks if Sungjin really thinks he is limited to just one title per round. Then he reveals another item from his coat, the Star of the Nameless, and says it would let Sungjin switch titles at will. As Sungjin stares, the merchant flashes his white-toothed grin again, and repeats his old promise in a more dangerous way. If Sungjin wants something, he only has to ask. In the hidden shop, Sungjin checks the star amulet again and sees its real value at once. It can change his active title every 10 minutes. When the hidden merchant says the price is 20,000 coins, Sungjin is stunned because even most legendary items cost far less. He quickly realizes the item is too good to ignore, but he also knows he is still at least 2 raids away from affording it. The merchant calmly puts the star away and tells Sungjin to just remember that an item like this exists. Seeing how abnormal the seller is, Sungjin tests him with a bigger question and asks if hunters can stay in contact outside raids. The merchant explains that normal communication between hunters is forbidden by the world itself unless they meet during a raid. When Sungjin asks if that means it is impossible, the merchant stops him there and says breaking that structure requires the power of God. The merchant defines that grand phrase in a blunt way. The power of God is just the holy power of creation, making something from nothing. Then he pulls out a cut glass bottle filled with strange fluid and offers it to Sungjin as an example. Sungjin touches the bottle and the item screen reveals a mythological relic called J-Spit, which can forcibly grant someone the title The Chosen One. It is the first myth-tier item Sungjin has ever seen, and the idea of forcefully changing another hunter's title immediately hits him as game-changing. When Sungjin asks the price, the merchant toys with him by asking what he thinks first, then casually reveals the real cost is just 1 white coin. Back at the inn before dawn, Sungjin finishes allocating his stats, re-equips Adjudicator, and prepares new magic for the next raid. Soldimer advises that illusion suits a swordsman who can use it offensively, and Sungjin memorizes the spell on the spot. With the spell learned, Sungjin takes the Tarkan Plateau information sheet and his egg toast outside to think. He sits in the rocking chair at sunrise, staring into space with the toast still in his mouth, too deep in thought to eat. Soldimer checks on him from off-panel, and Sungjin finally takes a bite and admits he is not hurt, just lost in thought. After Soldimer withdraws, Kane stays beside him in silence, and Sungjin absently pets the dog while replaying everything he saw in Darker Than Black. Bisgoro's voice suddenly cuts into Sungjin's thoughts, confirming that he saw and heard the whole black market meeting through Sungjin's equipment. That revelation bothers Sungjin, and he immediately thinks he should stop wearing the item when he does not need it. When Sungjin asks what the merchant really is, even Bisgoro can only say the man felt less like a human and more like something close to a devil or a god. Sungjin does not care what the merchant is for now. What matters is that the shop carries the exact tools he needs. Bisgoro understands why he wants the star, but he presses Sungjin on the holy water, and Sungjin admits he wants to use it to mark strong, trustworthy people. Bisgoro laughs harshly and says people who are both strong and trustworthy barely exist on real battlefields. The old knight argues that the strongest survivors are usually the ones who got that way by stealing every advantage from everyone around them. Sungjin pushes back and remembers allies like Saran, Igar, and Mahadas as proof that strength does not always have to look like that. Bisgoro still insists the same rule applies anywhere, then falls silent and leaves Sungjin alone with the ugly truth of his own past life. He thinks back to the final 10 from his previous life, a team full of monsters in skill and luck who still could not work together. What destroyed that team was not lack of power but pride, constant clashes over contribution, and a total failure to cooperate. Looking down at Blood Vengeance and Moon Spectre, Sungjin realizes that in this timeline he may already be the strongest one alive. That thought hardens into a plan. He will buy both the Star of the Nameless and the Holy Water of Baptism, then build a new final team of his own choosing. He takes out the twisted metal helix ring and studies its cruel effect. A willing kiss gives him 1 white coin and permanently cuts that person's future raid rewards. Now he finally understands the hidden merchant's strange price, even if he still has no idea what white coins really mean yet. Even so, he makes a ruthless new vow to gather those items, become the new power in the raids, and rule the game on his own terms. With his decision made, Sungjin turns back into 99 nights as the morning sun climbs higher behind him. The next raid opens on the Tarkan Plateau, a freezing high-altitude world above the clouds where the operator warns that isolated life has evolved into something especially dangerous. Even in warm clothes from Dalyupin, Sungjin shivers in the thin mountain cold and tells himself he will warm up once the fighting starts. As the other hunters start materializing on the plateau, one floating title makes Sungjin's jaw drop. Someone here is openly using Treasure Hunter. The Treasure Hunter is a short Arab man with daggers and bright eager eyes, and Sungjin instantly judges that he is either brave, stupid, or both. As the party gathers, the armored tank points out the 2 strange titles in this raid, Treasure Hunter and Sungjin's Adjudicator. Before anyone can settle down, Jamar makes a point of saying they should all get along and not stab each other in the back, which immediately makes Sungjin distrust him more. Then Mustafa eagerly grabs the spotlight and announces that this raid contains not 1 hidden element but 2. He explains that 1 hidden element is a secret location or item and the other is a hidden boss, instantly hooking the rest of the party. When the others press him, Mustafa boasts that every chapter has secrets like these and says his Treasure Hunter title can reveal them. The others get excited about extra rewards, but Sungjin can already tell from Mustafa's hedging that finding hidden bosses and actually killing them are very different things. Instead of arguing, Sungjin asks a sharper question: when exactly did Mustafa obtain the Treasure Hunter title? When Mustafa hesitates, Sungjin flatters him and says he wants that amazing title too, neatly baiting the boastful man into answering. The trick works, and Mustafa proudly starts recounting how he got the title in the desert after beating the basilisk and meeting a sphinx's riddle. He drags the story all the way to the hidden oasis and the mysterious lamp they found there, milking every bit of attention from the group. Then Mustafa abruptly claims he just sold that lamp at the black market for 2,000 coins, and the others are impressed on the spot. Sungjin instantly pegs that story as a lie, because anyone who found a mysterious lamp would have rubbed it first, and he can almost picture Mustafa's group getting wrecked by the genie afterward. Even so, Sungjin decides the liar is still useful, because Treasure Hunter can reveal the hidden spots while Sungjin plans to claim the rewards himself. The operator cuts off the side talk with a 3-minute warning, and the big armored inquisitor immediately drags the group back to Rio raid business. He introduces himself as Wade Impeller and makes his role clear at once: he is the team's tank. Jamar follows, identifying himself as a dual scimitar fighter, while Sungjin quietly files away the picture of a smooth-talking raider with blades on both hips. Next comes Shigetoki, a Japanese karate fighter with almost no gear and enough muscle to make up for it. Then Mustafa introduces himself as a dagger user, and Sungjin notes the irony that this loud, smug man shares a name with one of the final 10 from his old life but nothing else. Sungjin keeps his own introduction minimal, and just gives the false name K, presenting himself as nothing more than a swordsman. While the other 4 start discussing strategy, Sungjin tunes them out, yawns, and thinks about ending this chapter fast so he can finally test the Troll Seeker marble. He is almost eager for it, because some unlucky troll out there is about to be forced into a fight with him, lose 2 items, and die. Then the operator gives the 1-minute warning, and Sungjin waits on the freezing plateau with 4 unnamed hunters as the raid is finally about to start. The raid opens on Tarkin Plateau with a brutal rule set: kill 20 mobs, summon the Harpy Queen Liliha, and finish within an hour. While the other hunters worry that they have no real range specialist, Sungjin is already focused on a different problem. The other treasure hunter might steal the hidden reward before he does. Sungjin quietly settles on a plan to use his own treasure hunter hint immediately, clear the hidden piece first, and only deal with the rival hunter afterward. The countdown hits 0, and instead of fighting with the team, Sungjin casually announces that he is leaving to handle his own business. The others stare in disbelief, but Sungjin only tells them to earn contribution points by surviving without him. He flicks a coin, summons the ghost horse Shadowrun, and rides off across the plateau the instant the raid begins. As he gallops away, Sungjin cuts off any guilt and decides the weak can only survive this game if they prove they deserve to. That ruthless mindset pushes him even further. He no longer sees himself as just another player, but someone who has to pick the best survivors for the endgame. While riding, Sungjin calls the operator and activates Treasure Hunter to get the hidden clue before anyone else can. The hint points him toward cliff edges, abandoned offspring, and a survivor worthy of claiming a throne, but the wording is murky enough to slow him down. He stops Shadowrun and scans the cloud-covered plateau, trying to spot what the clue is really talking about. Remembering Bisgoro's borrowed vision, Sungjin calls him out and asks him to help search for the edge of the plateau. Their quick exchange turns into petty banter when Sungjin needles Bisgoro for being an old bachelor, and Bisgoro snaps back in offended pride. Even with Bisgoro watching, Sungjin has to keep riding blind through the thin air because neither of them can see the cliff through the moving clouds yet. Back with the abandoned team, the 4 hunters swallow their frustration and start clearing mobs exactly because they have no better option. Their first target is a monstrous mountain goat with huge spear-like spiral horns, and even the Inquisitor thinks it looks more like a predator than prey. The goat slams straight into the Inquisitor and sends him flying, forcing the team into a messy but urgent group counterattack. Working together just enough to survive, the 4 hunters finally bring the beast down, and realize even basic mobs here are absurdly strong. Before they can settle, a harpy swoops in, snatches the Inquisitor into the air, and throws the party into another scramble. The treasure hunter's fireball misses, but the pirate's wind cutter clips the harpy's wing and drops both monster and tank back to the ground. The team swarms the fallen harpy and kills it fast, but the rescue leaves the Inquisitor with his leg twisted badly from the crash. Instead of thanking them, Wade-Impeller snaps at the pirate for firing while he was still trapped in the harpy's grip, and the team's mood turns ugly fast. Then the pugilist mocks the injury, and Wade-Impeller's complaint turns into a louder fight over who has to stand in front and take the real risk. Far away, Sungjin keeps riding past goats he remembers as deadly from his first life, still searching for the plateau's true edge. He climbs to higher ground, rethinks the clue, and starts to worry that the cliff line might be symbolic instead of literal. Then Shadowrun suddenly stops at a sheer drop, and Sungjin realizes the plateau really is bordered by endless cliffs. Bisgoro confirms the whole plateau is likely ringed by vertical walls, which means Sungjin needs a flying search instead of a ground search. He dismisses Shadowrun, pulls out the magic carpet, and switches to a far riskier cliffside sweep. Elsewhere on the plateau, the abandoned team is still bleeding through every fight, and even after killing more goats and harpies, they know they are falling behind the raid timer. The potions close their wounds, but the earlier argument lingers so badly that nobody even bothers asking if the others are okay. Wade-Impeller sizes up his 3 teammates, and decides every one of them is trouble. The pugilist is too dangerous, the treasure hunter is slippery, and the pirate still feels untrustworthy. He saves his worst irritation for K, because Sungjin ditched them at the start and left the raid running at 4/5 strength. Even so, the team keeps moving together in grim silence, held together by survival instinct more than trust. At the cliff wall, Sungjin rides the magic carpet low and close, now convinced the hidden piece is some kind of egg hidden in a nest. Bisgoro suddenly warns him he has company, and Sungjin looks up to find 5 harpies diving toward him in open air. Fighting sword to claw on a flying carpet over a cliff is a terrible setup, so Sungjin switches to magic instead. Before he can finish the chant, Bisgoro fires the spell through him, and chain lightning erupts from Moon's specter into the flock. 2 harpies drop instantly, and Bisgoro reveals his new trick. Substitute chanting lets him cast the spell Sungjin is already thinking of, at double mana cost. The surviving harpies close in, and Sungjin has to learn aerial combat on the fly while dodging claws over open air. After a few rough evasions, he gets the timing, tilts the carpet sharply, and counters with clean sword cuts that cripple 2 more harpies at once. Just as he starts adapting, the operator interrupts with a death warning. He has dropped into restricted airspace below the hunting grounds. Sungjin immediately climbs back up along the cliff wall, choosing survival over pursuit, while the last 2 harpies keep pressing him. He cuts one pursuer down easily, but the last harpy breaks away and flees instead of dying with the others. Instead of chasing, Sungjin remembers that fleeing harpies return with reinforcements, and he coldly decides that will only save him time later. The real pressure is his carpet's flight limit, so he forces himself back to the search before he has to climb the cliff by hand. Then he spots a faint glimmer among the cliff minerals and immediately steers toward it with Biscoro confirming he sees it too. Hidden in the rock is a massive nest, and inside it rests a slightly golden egg that looks too precious to be ordinary. Sungjin gently lifts the egg with both hands, and the operator confirms he has just claimed the hidden piece, a egg of gold. Its passive skill only says it will tremble once a day, which leaves Sungjin staring at the item in baffled silence. Biscoro is no help either, because even he has never seen an egg like this before. Before Sungjin can study it more, a fresh chorus of harpy cries rolls in, and this time an entire flock is rushing the cliffside nest. He stuffs the egg into his cube at once, counts far too many enemies to fight safely in the air, and decides the cliff edge is no longer worth staying on. Ignoring the nearest attackers, he guns the magic carpet upward and races back toward the flat surface of the plateau. The moment he reaches solid ground, Sungjin jumps off the carpet, spins through the air, and lands ready as the flock crashes in behind him. Back on solid ground, Sungjin draws Moon's Spectre and coldly dares the whole flock to rush him where he can finally fight on his terms. On the freezing Tarkan plateau, Sungjin fires chain lightning through a flock of harpies and drops several at once, but 4 still stay in the air. When Biscoro's copy chant cuts in again, Sungjin matches it and releases 2 chain lightning spells at the same time, testing his new dual casting for real. The double cast works, but the left-hand shot wastes power on a lone target, and Sungjin realizes spell dual wielding needs the same fast judgment as fighting with 2 swords. He checks the cube and sees no boss warning yet, which tells him he still has room before the Harpy Queen is triggered. Instead of feeling relieved, Sungjin thinks about the other 4 hunters and coldly decides that if they cannot survive without him, they were never going to last in the late game anyway. Then he spots one surviving harpy fleeing toward the cliffs and stops himself from killing it, because too many kills here could summon the queen onto the other team. He turns that escaping harpy into a sheep with polymorph instead, and the helpless creature tumbles over the cliff bleeding. A low mana warning finally pops up, so Sungjin uses Lich's Beacon on the pile of dead harpies and drains back enough mana to keep moving. Guessing the Harpy Queen is about to appear elsewhere, Sungjin activates Swift Paw and sprints back to interfere only when needed, leaving weaker mobs alive so the others can still earn something. Elsewhere on the plateau, the other 4 hunters barely bring down a massive buffalo-like monster and end the fight exhausted, injured, and shaken by how hard even one enemy was. In the heavy silence after that fight, all 4 reach the same conclusion: if the queen appears now, they cannot beat her by themselves. The treasure hunter finally says it out loud, asking how they are supposed to beat the boss with only 4 people left. The pirate snaps back that the boss is only impossible because of him, dumping all his frustration on the weakest member. The treasure hunter nearly pulls his dagger in anger, but the Inquisitor cuts in before the team can start tearing itself apart. With no better plan, the pugilist suggests finding the missing adjudicator, and even the treasure hunter admits that having all 5 back would help. The pirate scoffs that K must already be dead, calling him a coward who ran off and got himself eaten. Right on cue, Sungjin walks back into the middle of the 4 hunters in his adjudicator cover role, completely clean and casual, while they stare at him in disbelief. Before they can even process his return, the cube announces that Harpy Queen Lilia has appeared, and the party instantly realizes the trigger happened without them meaning to. Sungjin immediately guesses that the lone harpy chasing him earlier must have been the final trigger, which only makes the others feel the timing is even crueler. A strange song rolls over the plateau as a flock of harpies sweeps in with a brighter, regal queen at the center, and the 4 hunters below instantly lose their nerve while Sungjin stays calm. Unlike the others, Sungjin stays calm and quickly tells them to spread out, because the queen's song causes confusion and is more dangerous if it catches them as a cluster. He also gives the practical fix: if someone gets hit, they should crouch and stay still while the others protect them and slap them awake. Then he adds one odd exception for himself, saying nobody needs to hit him awake because he already has someone else for that job. He tosses something into the air, and a wolf named Cain appears to guard him if the queen's song puts him under. Sungjin mutters that he could nearly handle this alone, then rubs a lamp and summons the blue genie Soldimer right in front of the stunned hunters. The treasure hunter visibly panics at the blue genie from the desert, and Sungjin's knowing grin makes it feel like he already understands why. As the queen's song grows closer, Sungjin assigns the last rolls. Cain must bite his foot if he drops, and the genie must stay glued to the treasure hunter and keep him alive. He even tells Soldimer to wake both him and Cain with weak magic if they both go down, showing he already expects the queen's song to land sooner or later. The treasure hunter tries to retreat from the genie anyway, but Soldimer keeps following him because that protection order was literal. With the formation finally set, Sungjin orders the genie to drag the flock lower first, and a full blizzard storm erupts into the sky. Ice and razor wind tear through the flock, knocking many harpies out of the air, but the queen and her tight guards still fly cleanly through the storm. Then Lilia opens her beak and releases a low-frequency song, starting the real boss fight. The queen's confusion song catches Sungjin immediately, and his body starts moving the wrong way no matter what he tries to do. He calls Kane for help, and the wolf launches in front of him just in time to swat away harpies diving at their helpless target. Nearby, the pugilist flails at empty air under the same effect and gets clawed bloody, while the rest of the team ignores him and proves they have no real teamwork at all. After several rough seconds, Sungjin shakes the confusion off, draws both swords, and starts cutting down the harpies crowding his side of the field. When the queen starts singing again, Sungjin and Kane separate on instinct so one confusion wave cannot disable both of them at once. This time the queen's confusion catches the treasure hunter and the genie instead, so Sungjin immediately sends Kane to wake the genie first and keep the protection plan intact. Kane bites Soldamer awake, and the genie instantly resumes guarding the still-stunned treasure hunter exactly as ordered. Sungjin clears the nearby harpies with quick electric shots and sword work, but when he looks up, the queen is still hovering far out of easy reach. He tries throwing blood vengeance with paw, but the queen is too far away and dodges before the flying sword even reaches her. Realizing ground attacks will not do it, Sungjin raises a dead harpy as a zombie mount and climbs onto its back to take the fight into the air himself. The zombie harpy climbs slowly, and Sungjin cuts down the interceptors on the way up while the queen keeps easing back out of reach. To break that standoff, he rings the master's bell and sends the zombie mount surging forward in one sudden burst toward the distant queen. Sungjin swings at the queen at full speed, but her escort throws themselves into the path and dies protecting her instead. Before he can try again, Liliha sings at him in the air, and Sungjin realizes confusion or sleep up here would be fatal. He rushes the mount forward anyway, but the confusion lands first and sends the zombie harpy spinning wildly through the air. The spinning mount crashes back onto the plateau, leaving Sungjin sick and furious even though he takes no real damage. So Sungjin calls out to Soldamer for a way to drag the queen lower, and the genie answers from afar that he has one costly spell left. Before the spell goes off, the queen sings again and hits the Inquisitor and Pirate instead, which finally gives Sungjin the opening he wanted. Determined to end this in one blow, Sungjin activates Baptism of Blood and lets Blood Vengeance drink from his hands to boost its killing power. Soldamer answers with reverse gravity, flipping up and down for the flock and throwing the airborne harpies into panicked confusion. When gravity snaps back to normal, ordinary harpies slam headfirst into the ground and even the queen drops low before she can fully recover. Sungjin is already there waiting, and he cuts into the exposed queen with Blood Vengeance and Moon Spectre before she can rise again. The operator announces Harpy Queen Liliha's defeat, and the rest of the flock immediately loses heart and flees. Sungjin lets the survivors go this time, deciding there is no point wasting effort on trash mobs now that the raid is already complete. Back with the group, he finds the treasure hunter untouched and sees that Soldamer really did guard him perfectly despite being drained. Sungjin dismisses Soldamer to rest, and the drained genie politely returns to his lamp. Sungjin starts to tell the treasure hunter why he spared him, but the moment is interrupted by a fresh shouting match nearby. The treasure hunter awkwardly explains that the fight started because one of them slapped the other too hard while waking him from the queen's sleep. Sungjin almost steps in, then realizes if they start hitting each other for real and turn troll, he could just loot the aftermath instead. So he stops and watches like a spectator instead, deciding petty teammates who want to brawl each other might deserve whatever follows. Kane trots back to him, and Sungjin casually asks the wolf who he thinks will win, which is unsettling enough to freeze both hotheads in place. The pair immediately back down and trade fake tough guy lines instead of fighting now that they know Sungjin is watching. Sungjin sounds almost disappointed and tells them they can fight if they want, but the winner will have to fight him next. That warning chills the whole group, and when Sungjin meets the pirate's eyes, the man quickly looks away like he had been considering something ugly too. Seeing that reaction, Sungjin decides there are times when showing overwhelming strength is useful, and for now he lets this rotten little team dynamic slide. With the fight and the near mutiny both defused, Sungjin turns back toward the treasure hunter to continue the conversation he was trying to start. Sungjin walks up to the raid's treasure hunter and bluntly orders him to use the title's active skill right now. The man's clueless reaction makes it obvious he bragged about the title without ever learning how to use it. After Sungjin spells it out, the hunter awkwardly asks the operator for a hidden clue on the plateau. The operator answers with another riddle about a king on a throne above the clouds whose only enemy is procrastination and who must be lured with a gift. Sungjin tries his usual replay command, then realizes the rookie treasure hunter has to repeat the request himself. Once the verse is repeated, Sungjin starts breaking it down and focuses on the line about a throne above the clouds. He quickly decides the throne must be the central hill, the one place he already noticed rising clear above the cloud layer. The rest of the riddle is murkier, but Sungjin guesses the answer has something to do with whatever this king has been putting off. When he asks the treasure hunter for ideas and gets nothing, Sungjin coldly tells him to stop chasing fancy titles and get stronger first. He gives the remaining hunters one last practical order to farm normal monsters and ignore the hidden boss, because their mutual hatred has already wrecked any teamwork. Sungjin leaves the toxic group behind and heads alone for the hill at the center of the plateau. As Bukitai urges him to start acting like a real commander, Sungjin says it is still too early to step in and lead the other hunters. He quietly admits he plans to take charge later, when only about 100 hunters remain, and asks her knight Bukitai to back him when that day comes. That rare respect pleases Bukitai enough to make the old warlord laugh for the first time in a while. With all his movement tools on cooldown, Sungjin has to climb the hill the hard way on foot, while mountain goats keep trying to slow him down. Midway up the hill, Kane suddenly barks and spins in place, urgently trying to tell Sungjin something before his summon time runs out. Before Sungjin can understand the warning, Kane times out and drops back into a small wooden figurine, and Sungjin ruefully picks him up. He checks the timer with the operator, confirms he still has plenty of time, and quietly takes out the Troll Seeker marble for later. Since no other dimension should have finished its hidden boss yet, Sungjin pockets the marble and keeps climbing at an unhurried pace. At the top, he finds the supposed throne, a cave opening tucked just below the hill's apex. Sungjin enters the dark cave using ghost vision, but the place is disappointingly empty. The only real clue is a heap of old bones scattered across the floor, so he starts searching the remains. Bisgoro suggests the king may have been procrastinating on getting food, and that pushes Sungjin to inspect the skulls more carefully. He realizes the large horned skulls are giant buffalo remains, not harpies or mountain goats, and finally locks onto the answer. Convinced the hidden boss wants a buffalo as its gift, Sungjin heads back outside to find one. At Sungjin's request, Bisgoro spots a giant buffalo off to the right, and Sungjin decides to kill it cleanly instead of ruining the offering with magic. The buffalo charges first, but Sungjin dodges like a matador and opens one deep cut across its neck. Even that monster keeps coming, so Sungjin sidesteps the second rush and carves the other side of its neck too. The giant buffalo finally collapses, and Sungjin walks up to the massive corpse without a hint of straying.